Alright, here's a rapid-fire condensing of this video for the people who are impatient and who are going to click off as soon as they get even remotely bored.
You get back here, young man!
You know who you are. Anime Vesemir is not Bodnia Vesemir, or any other version of Vesemir. He is some alternate, viciously evil person
God, he sucks.
that looks totally different than Vesemir, but uses the same name. He does not do any of the important things he is supposed to do as Vesemir, like caring for Geralt.
Are you serious?
None of this scene right here is possible if the anime counts as canon.
Geralt, I've been waiting for you.
Vesemir. Vesemir.
Jesus fucking Christ.
He kills multiple people in cold blood in a manner that is indefensible and most certainly not Vesemir. I believe Beau is either completely incompetent or is very talented but has malicious intentions with the lore.
Don't be so harsh.
The anime tries to turn Witchers into the bad guys, and I don't like it at all. The writers completely ruin Deglan's reputation and integrity as a character.
Why?
I don't know!
And they do the same for Witchers in general by having them create monsters.
Imagine an army of beasts designed to wipe out the elves and the old races, to secure land and food.
Fuck off, asshole.
Witcher training is completely and utterly backwards, indefensibly cruel, and pointless.
It's a numbers game, young fella.
Wasteful to a degree that it is irredeemable as a result of the changes made by the Netflix writers. Witcher training was bad in the books, but nowhere near as viciously brutal and wasteful as it is here.
Well, now you see that's bad. That's really, really bad.
Sugo and Luka are both tokenized characters that are completely gypped out of any meaningful role within the movie, despite the audience's insistence to praise the writers for their inclusion at all.
But you know what? It pisses me off.
But I disagree completely. The writers' attempt at inclusion is fucking terrible. They could have done so much better.
Can't change the spots on a shit leopard.
The writers essentially have the mages and witchers trade places in terms of power and roles within the story. Mages are much weaker than they should be in the anime, and witchers are much stronger with magic than they should be. And the writers do everything they can to paint witchers in a negative light, while painting mages as the victims / misunderstood villain of the story. And I have a lot to say about that as well.
Stop trying to demonize the hero and drum up fake sympathy for the villain.
There are many problems with Tetra and her backstory that we need to talk about at length, like her mother being a sorceress somehow.
How is this possible?
And how Tetra is full of shit on multiple counts, as well as there being way too many coincidences when it comes to Vesemir and Tetra, since apparently Vesemir killed Tetra's mother.
Yeah. Wait, what?
More on that later. Kitsu is basically a complete idiot, and I go on for some time about it later on, especially when it comes to her being in cahoots with Tetra based on a lie that anyone who's ever lived could have seen right through. We're going to talk about some stuff with Illyana that really pisses me off, like how Vesemir straight up murdered her in cold blood and didn't lift a damn finger to save her. And I'm also pretty sure this version of Vesemir dumped her body in a lake at the end of the movie. But again, we will talk about that later. We are going to talk about a multitude of other smaller details as well. Some are very fucking annoying, while others are a mere wasted opportunity that I wanted to bring to your attention. Again, this video is incredibly long. I realize that. I'm going to try to work on making shorter videos in the future. This one just kind of spiraled out of control on me. I've got a lot of things to say about it, and why use 10 words when you can use 1,000, right? So without further ado, welcome to my critique on Netflix's The Nightmare of the Wolf. Hey there, dear viewer. Hey guys! Welcome to another ridiculously long video no one asked for.
Thanks, I hate it.
Made by your favorite objectively shitty wannabe YouTuber with delusions of grandeur.
I want to be Instagram famous, bitch.
Call me Gerald Bravlowski, cause I'm here to rescue the world from bad movie experiences, one 50-page essay at a time.
God bless you, sir. I know.
Today we're talking about The Nightmare of the Wolf, a Netflix anime. The lead writer is Beau. I'm pretty sure he is responsible for most of the things that I don't like about this anime, but I will still try my hardest to be nice to him. I can't make any promises though. Throughout this video, I am going to try and lay out all of the opinions I have that led me to make such harsh criticisms of Beau's work. I am by no means an expert in Witcher lore.
Poor bastard, so dumb.
So there will be plenty of things that even I have no understanding of, or that I missed entirely. So if there is something that I missed, please tell me about it in the comments below. I want to know all of those high-level critiques that I'm just not knowledgeable enough to pick up on. In the meantime, though, how's about we get started on what few criticisms my feeble mind could think of?
Yeah, why not?
I've tried to label each section in a way that summarizes what I'm talking about, but there's just no way to boil down all the points I want to make into a phrase short enough to make a section title out of. So if the section titles seem a bit inadequate or inaccurate, just know that I didn't waste too much energy on it, really. I also did try very hard to make this video a pleasant listening experience.
Well, it's not.
I hope everyone enjoys it, and I hope to hear from you guys in the comment section below for engagement and what have you. But without further ado, on to the first point. Anime Vesemir is very different from Bodnia Vesemir, Witcher 3 Vesemir, and Book Vesemir. If you subtract the anime from your considerations, there is actually quite a bit of consistency across Vesemir's iterations. I am including Bodnia Season 2 Vesemir in that statement as well. Aside from Anime Vesemir, all of the different versions of Vesemir are kind and caring towards Ciri, while being stern towards his male students, growing softer as they get older. Anime Vesemir is just a douche to everyone except Illyana, and he has no time for the new recruits at Kaer Morhen.
Look, you know me and children.
Get over it, young fella.
Yes, there is some camaraderie between Vesemir and the other Witchers, I know. That's not my point. He's the swaggering playboy to everyone except Illyana.
The swashbuckling Witcher for hire, the slayer Vesemir.
No, Illyana, I love you.
The only one that he's real to is her. And he has no time at all for the new recruits at Kaer Morhen, who happen to be Geralt, Eskel, Lambert, and fucking Remus.
Who? Why?
I don't know!
But we will talk about him later. Vesemir does not have time for any of these boys at all. He wants to do nothing but party and drink.
Now, can we please go get right properly drunk?
Which ends up leading to Luka's death, because of course it does.
What are you prattling about?
Can't have Luka doing anything important, now can we?
Fuck no!
No, that would just be ridiculous. Anime Vesemir takes nothing seriously.
We must make a killing at druid festivals.
While the other versions of Vesemir were all the prime example of a professional witcher.
Killing monsters is not something to be taken lightly.
Vesemir was supposed to be the one to do things right, with purpose. He was slower as an old man, but he always took his work seriously. Vesemir respected the hunt. Anime Vesemir sees it all as one big game.
Tragic. Really, very terrible.
Which is why you see Anime Vesemir doing a stand-up routine to an audience of one wannabe ghoul Leshen thing.
You're a trailblazer, launching the new fad. Trendsetter, you.
As a family of 5 is nearly slaughtered to the last, nearby.
What? Holy shit.
3 little girls and their father, all dead so Vesemir could have a one-on-one fight scene with this creature that is definitely not a Leshen.
Are you serious?
Every other version of Vesemir would have jumped in as soon as he heard what was happening. Maybe he wouldn't have been able to save the little girls, but he sure as fuck would not have been hiding behind a tree, waiting for Sugo to run by, so Vesemir could catch him and shush him, just so Sugo could go, "Oh wow, it's a Witcher!"
A Witcher.
Jesus fucking Christ, Chuck, what the fuck was that?
No. Vesemir would have at least tried to save the little girls. This entire scene was just plain pathetic and stupid and indefensibly wrong on Anime Vesemir's part.
I get it, yes.
None of it makes any sense when you really think about it. Yeah, but there's plenty of scenes in the other Witcher materials that make very little sense when you think about it too. I know, Stanley. Shut the fuck up and let me talk. The same could be said for many parts of the books, games, and other mediums of The Witcher. But that does not make me wrong. Just because the other mediums have some inconsistencies as well, does not mean we should ignore the problems in the anime. And goddammit, the anime has far more inconsistencies than any other medium of The Witcher. And that's just basically fact. I mean, prove me wrong, I guess. Leave a comment. I don't know what else you want me to say.
I don't know. Who cares?
Vesemir was supposed to be the serious mentor, who was supposed to be setting the example for the others. And Anime Vesemir could not be further from that description.
That is obvious.
The Season 2 version of Vesemir is far more serious and far more caring towards the other Witchers than he has any business being, if these two are supposed to be the same person.
When you took Eskil down, it broke me.
I just think the old version of this guy, Anime Vesemir, would look like Johnny Knoxville does now, and he would act the same as he did when he was younger.
As drinking, eating, sleeping.
It just wouldn't be anywhere near as funny or attractive to everyone else. But he would still be the same old douche. There's no way the anime version of Vesemir could ever end up looking like Kim Bodnia. The build is just too damn different. Anime Vesemir would be tall and skinny, again, like Johnny Knoxville. It's the only example that comes to mind. Not Kim Bodnia. And then there is the little wrinkle of Kim Bodnia's version of Vesemir almost crying when his fellow Witchers get killed in the second season finale. That shit would have never happened if Season 2 had the old version of Anime Vesemir in it. No fucking way, dude. That's why I say Anime Vesemir is not Bodnia Vesemir. Like, the showrunner of Season 2, Lauren Hissrich, should have known what Studio Mir was up to, right? She should have known what they were planning on doing with Vesemir's character. So why wasn't Kim Bodnia's writing adjusted to fit for the Studio Mir changes?
I have no idea.
Kim Bodnia went to a magazine and talked about how he would have done the performance differently if he had seen the anime beforehand. Why didn't you guys show him? Why didn't you guys... Like, I could keep going on and on. Is it incompetence? Was it a creative decision? A creative decision to be incompetent, maybe? Why keep Kim Bodnia and the writers in the dark of what Studio Mir was doing? That doesn't make any sense to me. There are only so many explanations for a discrepancy like this. The Netflix Witcher universe simply went in two totally different directions with Vesemir.
Well, now you see, that's bad. That's really, really bad.
There is going to be a never-ending debate within the fandom to decide which is actually canon. I know my vote is firmly for the previous versions of the character. Book or game version of Vesemir. That's who's canon. Because at least those versions of Vesemir had some depth to him. He was not an indefensible murderer with no remorse or redeemable qualities other than his looks that will very soon fade. That's all Anime Vesemir has going for him. His looks and his witty attitude.
My, what do you find this rubbish?
Other than that, he is indefensible. Seriously, guys. If this version of Vesemir was not animated to be Chad himself, it would be completely impossible to think of him as anything other than an objectively bad, irredeemable simp. His looks and his voice absolve him in the eyes of most. The halo effect, they call it. Good traits are attributed to attractive people. Being a good-looking person, you'll get away with a whole lot. And the same holds true for animated characters in the eyes of the audience. I think it would have been much better all the way around to have Vesemir be a bit less attractive, but still maintain his character's integrity. The storytelling potential is much greater that way. Looking at the Witcher world through the lens of a guy that lets whole families die when he could have done something is going to render most lessons the writers would try to teach as moot. Or maybe not. I'm not saying Vesemir should have been a goody two-shoes. Far from it. But he should not have been the complete and total bastard that the anime version is. The writers think they redeemed Vesemir when they had him let Filavandrel go with the elf child.
Take the child and go. Now.
Oh, the witch has found his morals.
And when they had Vesemir confront Deglan.
You have to burn it to the ground, or I will.
They think that was enough to redeem him.
Well, it's not.
But they didn't, and they can't. I see right through that shit. Those were just empty gestures being done to try to give Vesemir some kind of moral footing. But he has none. Not this version.
You swindled the Redanian priest. Had him thinking he was cursed.
And it boggles my mind that all of this went over the heads of the writers. It seems like they didn't think of any of this, or they don't care. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the one that's missing something. If I am, let me know and leave it in the comments. A huge chunk of the reason Vesemir is important to the story at all is because of his relationship with Geralt, the undisputed main character of the Witcher universe. Well, maybe that's not the entire reason Vesemir is important, but it's certainly a big percentage of the reason why we care about Vesemir at all. So perhaps you can imagine why I would be horrified if the writers decided to completely undermine that relationship, just so the writers could turn Vesemir into the antithesis of his former self.
Captain, please do not do that.
Unfortunately for us all, that is exactly what the writers of the anime have decided to do. Geralt is no longer the child surprise of Vesemir.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Like he was in the books, and the games, and every other adaptation of the Witcher universe. And like he should have remained in every subsequent adaptation. But instead, for whatever horrible reason, the writers have decided to have Sven occupy that role in Geralt's life.
Bad enough we're putting ourselves out of business with every monster we kill.
Vesemir is no longer the one to come get Geralt from his mother, Visenna.
Why?
I don't know!
I mean, Vesemir kind of is the one that took Geralt to Kaer Morhen originally. So this idea that Geralt was just like, oh, that one's Geralt. And I don't know, I feel like it was supposed to be like, oh my gosh, cool. And I didn't think it was very cool.
Which means Vesemir and Geralt would not have had time to bond and become close.
Well, now you see, that's bad. That's really, really bad.
In the anime, Vesemir first meets Geralt at Kaer Morhen, when Vesemir arrives alone after killing the wannabe Leshen ghoul thing.
Crossed a Leshen on my way here.
Geralt was already at Kaer Morhen, because he had been picked up by Sven along with the other boys. Am I the only one who sees the issue here? The live-action flagship show already very clearly established that Vesemir was the one to pick up Geralt from his mother.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Geralt, I've been waiting for you.
Vesemir. Vesemir.
Vesemir was supposed to have been the one to give Geralt his name.
Stop it, Geralt.
You don't get to use that name. Vesemir gave me that name.
It's assumed that this happened while Geralt and Vesemir were traveling to Kaer Morhen after Visenna abandoned him. I'm not talking about the time Geralt wanted to make his name a really long, obnoxious one. I'm just talking about his first name. That was supposed to have come from Vesemir, I'm pretty sure, at least according to the Netflix show in Season 1.
Vesemir gave me that name.
If Sven was the one to pick up Geralt, then the circumstances that led to Geralt becoming a Witcher must have been very different indeed. Why change all that?
I don't know!
Why needlessly change integral details of the main character's origin story?
I don't know!
Just so you can have Vesemir fighting a Leshen ghoul thing at the start of the movie?
That's stupid.
Geralt should have been with Vesemir during his fight with the Leshen ghoul thing, but that wouldn't make much sense either, now would it? Because anime version of Vesemir is not the type to take care of a child surprise. Oh my no.
You know me and children.
He is much more worried about getting drunk and laid.
Now, can we please go get right properly drunk? I say we perk up, drink up.
Can someone please tell me that I'm not the only one who sees the problem with all this? If it's just me, and I'm wrong, That's fine. I can live with that. But god damn it, there is just no way that I can reconcile these two as the same people.
No fucking way!
The old Vesemir took his oath seriously. He took his job as the mentor of his students seriously.
Killing monsters is not something to be taken lightly.
The creators of the anime, Beau, Lauren, whoever else, they changed Vesemir way too much for it to make sense to have him caring for Geralt like a surrogate father. But we needed to see exactly that. The writers needed to establish a strong relationship between Vesemir and Geralt. That was priority number one, but they deliberately chose not to in favor of making Vesemir into the medieval version of Chad McLongcock himself. So now, in the Netflix universe, Geralt is very much a victim of Stockholm Syndrome, or something like that, because Vesemir basically ignored Geralt and treated him like shit throughout his childhood, but then in the live-action show, Geralt continues to act as if Vesemir was the way he was in the books, you know, like an actual father.
But you protected us anyway.
No, I taught you how to fend for yourselves.
So clearly, Geralt has some kind of Stockholm Syndrome or whatever it's called. If that's even a thing. I don't know if that's even a real diagnosis anymore.
You know nothing.
Geralt pretends Vesemir is this great father figure throughout the Netflix Witcher universe, when that has literally never been the case. Talking specifically about the Netflix Witcher universe. Vesemir does not give two shits about Geralt, and the two literally never interact throughout the entire runtime of the anime, except the time where Vesemir throws Geralt through a fucking wall for the crime of paying attention.
But out there, you have nothing. But here, we offer strength, purpose, respect.
Don't be so harsh.
And then in the end of the movie, where Vesemir says Geralt's name for the one and only time during the anime.
There'll always be another monster, Geralt.
But that's all Geralt needed though, because like I said, in the live-action show, Geralt is always talking about Vesemir like he was the greatest father ever.
You and a batch of mutated orphans with nowhere else to go.
Do you hear me, Beau? You had a duty to portray Geralt and Vesemir's relationship. The flagship show set it up in Season 1.
Geralt, I've been waiting for you.
Vesemir. Vesemir.
And you had a duty to show it, and you didn't.
You and I are enemies now.
I would argue that that was the most important goal to accomplish with this story. But you didn't do that, though, did you, Beau?
No, not quite.
Nah, you had your own plans for the Witcher universe the entire time, didn't you? Plans that included you, Beau DeMaio, violating the lore on a fundamental level without any lube at all.
Sorry doesn't cut it, you weird fuck!
Plans of poisoning the relationship of our beloved characters, so as to undermine the impact they have with the audience, along with many other changes, or rather, violations of the lore.
You feel bad.
Many of which we're going to talk about throughout this video. There is no particular order to the chapters, at least none that I'm conscious of, so feel free to jump around if you like. It's possible you might get confused, but maybe not. I don't know. Just because I'm dumb does not mean you guys are, right? In this here sci-fi.com article, DeMaio explains why he turned Vesemir into Trevor Belmont from the Netflix Castlevania anime.
God damn you!
I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but the gist is this. Since Vesemir as an old man is kind, caring, and playful with Ciri, Beau sees no problem with making Vesemir the embodiment of everything bad and insufferable about men in the modern day. Vesemir being nice to Ciri apparently means it's okay to remove every good quality Vesemir ever displayed.
But that ain't right.
Beau claims that if you deconstruct this version of Vesemir, the book version, you would end up with the anime version of Vesemir.
Bullshit! No fucking way!
What would kind old Vesemir have been like when he was young? Duh. Obviously, he would be the worst kind of person with very few redeeming qualities.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Guys, I'm sorry. I just can't wrap my head around this logic. So because old Vesemir is kind to Ciri, Beau took that as his green light to turn Vesemir into some corrupted amalgamation of Vesemir and Trevor Belmont. Just younger and hotter and way more arrogant and insufferable than either one. I mean, that just sucks, guys. There's no way around it. Now, I have a strong feeling that Beau never actually gave two shits about who Vesemir was in the books.
Probably not.
I have an even stronger feeling that this whole spiel about deconstructing old Vesemir is nothing more than air being blown up our collective assholes.
That's the point.
I don't think Beau ever gave two shits about the character we all know and love. And I doubt Beau gave much thought to how his writing would affect the audience's perception of Vesemir as a character.
Probably not.
I think Beau already had a story in mind. I don't think this story, The Nightmare of the Wolf, was written to fit within the wider Witcher universe. I think this was written as a standalone Beau DeMaio project, and it just has Witcher names on it to give it recognition.
Thanks, I hate it.
I just cannot see how the writers could get to where they went if they ever cared about fitting into the Witcher world.
They would not.
The only way The Nightmare of the Wolf makes any sense is if the writers were trying to create their own story the entire time.
You seduced me and you used me.
Which is exactly what I think happened. They made sure to use certain names that we recognize, like Vesemir and Kaer Morhen. But that is where the recognition ends for most fans.
Welcome to hell.
There is not much of anything in this anime that you could point to and say, yeah, that's something from the Witcher universe.
Yeah, why?
Most of the visuals in this anime have nothing to do with the Witcher lore. It's all just random shit the artists drew up that Beau thought looked cool. Yes, I am being extremely harsh with my criticism of Beau's decision-making. I recognize that.
Can't change the spots on a shit leopard.
Maybe I am being a bit unfair. Maybe Beau was not maliciously trying to destroy something we all love very much. Maybe he was genuinely trying to make the Witcher universe better.
Bullshit!
I can't decide on what I want the truth to be. If he was maliciously trying to destroy The Witcher, then I would argue that Beau is actually very talented and has a ton of promise as a writer. But if Beau was genuinely trying to do something good with all of these decisions, that means Beau does not know enough about The Witcher to know how egregiously offensive and terrible his decisions were for the consistency and integrity of the lore.
That's a bad thing, though, right?
It's hard to decide which is worse. A talented but malicious writer who is capable of making entertaining but destructive adaptations, or a well-intentioned dumbass who does not know enough about the source material to tell when he is making an awful, terrible mistake.
I have no idea.
At least with the malicious writer, the movie would be fun to watch, even if it absolutely destroys the source material. I don't think Beau is a talentless hack, which is why I don't believe Beau had good intentions with the lore. The anime is still entertaining to watch if you separate it from the lore completely. Completely. That's why I believe Beau came into this project with the intention of destroying it. I think he already knew what story he wanted to tell. A story where the people who are supposed to be the good guys are actually the bad guys, and where the bad guys are really the good guys. That's the story Beau wanted to tell. That's why the writers went out of their way to tell the audience about Tetra's sob story.
The silly sorceress who'd crossed a gullible priest.
Bullshit!
And that's why the Witchers are the ones creating monsters.
Hunting monsters for coin wasn't enough. Now you make them.
Instead of mages, like it was in the books. That's the story Beau wanted to tell right from the beginning. Having it called The Witcher adds brand recognition, a built-in fan base, and then he wouldn't have to come up with all the world-building details on his own. He could use what he wanted from The Witcher, which was not very much at all, to be honest, and throw out the rest in favor of his preconceived ideas. I cannot prove that Beau did anything malicious, and I know most of you will doubt very seriously that I am right. I totally get that, kind of. I'm not saying you need to agree with me, but you've got to admit, something fishy is going on here.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
There are simply too many inconsistencies and problems with the writing of this anime, and the writers did everything they could to bend the Witcher lore to the will of their new narrative.
No more. Please.
The whole Witchers create monsters and Tetra is really the victim angle. Why would they do that if not for malicious intentions or sheer incompetence?
I don't know!
And which would you rather it be? I mean, yes, of course, I know. Perhaps there's an alternative option that I'm not explaining. I fully admit that.
I admit it when I'm wrong.
But what do you want from me? Leave it in the comments if there's some alternative explanation that I'm just not seeing, because I'm a complete idiot. Moving on. It's true that witchers have never been portrayed as nice, kind, caring, or even good much of the time in pretty much all other mediums of The Witcher.
They know even if they try to be nice and even if they try to be heroic, people are going to hate them anyway, so they kind of just do their own thing, they charge people, and then they go about their business.
But there is no arguing with the fact that witchers are an overall positive force for good in the Witcher universe. They're very far from perfect, but Geralt and non-anime Vesemirs, as well as others like them, all strive very hard to give witchers a good name. There's always a few bad apples, but for the most part, witchers are a positive force for good. So the idea Beau had to make witchers irredeemably evil by having them betray their most important vow that they ever took is an objectively bad idea. From where I'm sitting.
Imagine an army of beasts designed to wipe out the elves and the old races.
Just so happens that I'm sitting in the dunce chair, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong.
I admit it when I'm wrong.
There are a few bad apple witchers throughout the lore, but most of them are dealt with in one way or another. And it's very much not the norm for witchers to be complete and utter bastards. They're just strict to their code and don't take any shit from anybody. That does not make them evil by any means. The higher vampires that feed on blood and human suffering are evil. Not all vampires are evil, though. Don't mistake me. But witchers are not that, though. They don't thrive on human suffering. They are what stands between humanity and evil of that kind, as well as good old animalistic brutality from the creatures that came over during the conjunction of the spheres. Calling witchers evil would take a whole hell of a lot of mental gymnastics to truly believe. Remember, we are not comparing anyone to the modern world. Yes, witchers did do unspeakable horrors to children, especially in the anime, as we will discuss very soon. But mages have done far worse, and there are even darker entities that inhabit the Witcher universe who are capable of far greater evil than what we've seen so far. So it's a real stretch to call witchers evil. Like the crones of Crookback Bog, for example. The things that they're implied to have done to children is just pure evil, and the witchers were never guilty of crimes on that level. So where, I ask, do the writers get the idea that witchers are evil, when they live in the same universe as everything I have just described? Good and evil are all very much relative. That cannot be understated. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, and someone will come along and set my ass straight on this. Leave a comment below if that's you, and also like and subscribe. But to me, everything about this idea to make witchers evil flies in the face of so many aspects of the book, right down to the core moral pillars of the story.
But you know what? It pisses me off.
So perhaps you can see why I tend to call the Witcher universe fan fiction. I'm not the only one that says that too. Witchers are not always the good guys throughout the story, but they are the focus of it, for the most part. But there is no solid argument that I know of where you could claim witchers are the bad guys of the Witcher universe.
Stop trying to demonize the hero and drum up fake sympathy for the villain.
There are simply too many other things that are objectively evil that if you were to make a spectrum of good and evil, witchers would have to land somewhere on the positive side because there are just so many other evil things out there. Because again, good and evil is all relative. So yeah, there's no solid argument that I know of where you could claim witchers are the bad guys. And even if you could, why would you want to?
Why are you doing this?
Changes have ripples, and there is no telling how this would contaminate the story and cause narrative problems. But I can assure you, there will be ripples. I think there is a case to be made that witchers are actually the moral compass of the story in a lot of ways. Many times, they are the only level head to be found when a level head is exactly what is needed most, because they approach everything without fear and emotions, unfettered by their natural impulses. They are the definition of a fucking cool head. Cool hand Luke, baby. But witchers are far from perfect. Some of them are downright bastards of the highest order, but nowhere near on the level of the worst mages, or vampires, or, many other humans out there. Most witchers just want a fair deal and to be left in peace to do their work. So it's hard to condemn anyone as the villain simply for being an emotionless dick, or at least it should be very difficult to do that. Unfortunately for us all, though, that's essentially what Lauren and Beau have done in this anime.
Oh, that's just great.
Because of how witchers are perceived in the source material, these two thought they would get away with making the witchers the bad guys. Because witchers can be dicks and they're not always nice, Lauren and Beau thought that they'd get away with this no problem.
I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked.
I'm sure that there's a few experts of the lore out there that could come in and drop some quotes that make this idea seem plausible or at least explainable.
No! God, please, no!
But that doesn't mean jack shit to me. You could polish a turd until you see your own reflection. But that doesn't mean that you should. It doesn't matter if you can justify a decision. It's all about whether or not you should justify that decision. And this is one they most certainly should not have tried to justify. The problem is not that the Witchers were made into the bad guys. Well, actually, that kind of is the problem. But it's even more of a problem that the Witchers have taken the place of the bad guys from the mages.
Yeah, why? That doesn't make any sense.
That there is the heart of the problem. Mages are not supposed to be the good guys. They never have been. They are behind almost every bad thing to ever happen on the continent. I mean, that's pushing it, but still. Even the good mages have all sorts of blood caked all over their hands. Mages are knee-deep in guilt and blood. Absolving the mages to make Witchers the bad guys just plain fucking sucks. There's no way around it.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Especially in the way that the writers have decided to make the Witchers the bad guys. By having Deglan betray everything the Witchers ever stood for. That really fucking sucks. And it just so happens that that's what we're going to talk about next. What's the worst thing a Witcher school could do from the perspective of the outside world?
I have no idea.
What action do you think would ruin the Witcher's reputation the fastest and for all time?
Who the hell knows?
I'm not creative enough to think of funny alternative options to list off, so I'm just going to give you the answer. The worst thing the Witchers could possibly do in the eyes of the public, clearly, is to create monsters themselves.
Hunting monsters for coin wasn't enough. Now you make them. Monsters were going extinct. I had to protect our way of life.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Like, obviously, the world would flip the fuck out about that. So when Deglan, the leader of the Witcher Order, decides that the best course of action he can take to save the Witcher Order is to create monsters of their own and release them into the wild, you can see why I would be confused, right?
There'll always be another monster.
Apparently not.
Deglan really is the world's biggest idiot if he really thought creating monsters was going to be the thing to save the Witcher Order.
What an idiot!
If you knew beasts would be good for business.
Actually, Witchers have a pretty legitimate reason to have people hate them. I mean, creating these monstrosities so that you can charge people a lot of money to kill those things. You're the only people who can kill those things, and then you go live with a lot of riches because you're charging people so much, and you have this kind of luxurious life when everybody else is struggling and trying not to be killed by these monsters. Yeah, I kind of get why people might want to harm them.
The only way this storyline could make any sense without completely destroying the integrity of Deglan's character is to have the monsters be created by a traitor, by someone who is motivated to destroy the Witcher Order, because only then would it make sense to have Witchers making monsters. If Geralt or Vesemir, non-anime version, found out that their fellow Witchers had been creating new monsters, releasing them into the wild to prey on people, and then taking payments to dispatch those same monsters, there is no way either one of them, Geralt or Vesemir, would keep being a Witcher. Especially Geralt. Like, full stop right there. Geralt's whole shtick is that he would choose to do no evil, rather than choosing between the lesser or greater evil.
Lesser, greater, middling. It's all the same. If I have to choose between one evil and another, then I prefer not to choose at all.
I firmly believe that if Geralt was faced with this choice, he would just bail on the Witcher Order and strike out on his own. And the same goes for Vesemir. I know he throws a stink about it in the anime.
You have to burn it to the ground, or I will.
You're so full of shit.
And that's all well and good, but the anime fails to appreciate the magnitude of this betrayal. And there's a big difference between what anime Vesemir did in the movie and what Bodnia, Witcher 3, or book Vesemir would have done. If it ever got out that Witchers made their own monsters, the name Witcher would be tainted forever, and I'd bet you there'd be even more pogroms to get rid of them all.
It should be tried and executed, no questions asked.
Because Witchers alone were dangerous enough, and if they created their own monsters, who are much more dangerous than traditional monsters, then the Witcher Order would be target number one for every kingdom in the land.
That is obvious.
This is not the kind of betrayal the continent would be able to forget.
So he doesn't cut it, you weird fuck!
And the writers simply failed to see that. The Witchers doing this would be akin to North Korea launching nukes at a nearby NATO-friendly country without expecting the entire world to come crashing down upon them like a fucking tidal wave. Wait, what? You guys are mad? That's crazy. I never thought you guys would get mad. Like, what? Of course the entire world would flip the fuck out about Witchers creating monsters.
Yeah, no shit, man.
It's simply a foregone conclusion that such an action is akin to suicide. You might cause some damage on your way out, but doing such a stupid thing would seal their fate faster than Luka can say,
limp prick manhole.
My whole point is that the creating monsters angle can only be in the movie at the cost of Deglan's character, and I really don't think it was worth it.
Neither do I.
I think Deglan could have been one of the coolest characters ever thought of in the Witcher universe. The key words are could have. On the surface, Deglan is cool as hell. He's got awesome shoulder armor, deep resounding voice from Graham McTavish, and a sweet beard. You have the recipe for an awesome character. But the actions Deglan takes throughout the story place him firmly in the category of incompetent shitheel. And again, he was written into a corner. Deglan is basically the scapegoat of the entire movie.
What about with the elf? Did you give Kitsu a choice before you mutated her?
No, I thought we'd killed her.
None of it feels natural. It just feels like the writers forced all of this to happen, which is exactly what happened. Good stories feel organic, like the events are taking place as a result of the characters' personalities. In the anime, it's the other way around. The story was shaped around the events, and the characters are being bent to fit it. They're going about it the wrong way, if you ask me.
I didn't ask you, and I don't care.
Characters make stories, guys. It's all about the characters. It always has been. So saying Deglan thought this would be a brilliant plan tells you how much of a dumbass he would have to be.
Think of all the coin you stand to make, young fella.
You're never gonna live to enjoy it.
The whole plot of the movie depends on Deglan being a complete and utter idiot with no rational thinking abilities whatsoever.
We were created to kill creatures like these, not to make them.
I won't weep for doing what needed doing.
Oh dear, I seem to have spotted a cunt. Good day.
Because only a complete and utter idiot with no rational thinking abilities would come to the conclusion that creating monsters could somehow save the Witcher Order.
We gotta protect ourselves, Vesemir.
You're a fake and a fraud.
And Deglan doesn't come off as a dumbass either. He has good dialogue a lot of the time, and his design lends him a certain gravitas. So it just makes no sense to me that Deglan could be so short-sighted as to think creating monsters was a good idea.
Monsters were going extinct. I had to protect our way of life.
You are dumb. It is the exact opposite.
Which is why I keep saying that this decision was forced on Deglan by the writers, rather than this being the result of Deglan's personality.
There'll always be another monster.
Apparently not.
Deglan would need to be a complete idiot to not realize the implications of such a dumb move. I don't know how many other ways I can say it.
I get it, yes.
If your entire story relies on a key character making unbelievably stupid, dumb decisions, then you might want to rethink what you're doing.
You were always too focused on the gold in your hand.
Let's talk a bit more about the failures of the Witcher Order, like how they have the most backwards-ass, needlessly brutal training regimens to ever exist, and Deglan is a shitty, awful leader for allowing it all to happen.
It's a numbers game, young fella.
You're full of shit.
Now, I'm sure Deglan isn't supposed to be the person to have thought up the steps to creating a Witcher in the Netflix Witcher universe, but he is the one with the ability to change it, so he is just as much to blame as his predecessors and whoever thought of this shit.
I won't weep for doing what needed doing.
Are you bragging?
Adding even further to his tarnished reputation, like I was bloviating about earlier. The activities the Witchers have their recruits doing as training barely makes any sense during the best of times, like the stupid jungle gym in Season 2. That's dumb, but at least it isn't like senseless brutality and needless suffering. And at the worst of times, though, the Netflix Witcher universe training regimen is just sheer blind cruelty for no other reason than pure meanness, on top of being wasteful to a degree that I don't think anyone can argue with.
How many survive these trials?
Depends. How many are Witchers?
Before I get into it, I'm not saying that we should be holding the Witchers accountable by today's standards. I just got done lecturing you earlier about how we shouldn't do that. But even by the standards of their world, what the Witchers do in the Netflix Witcher universe is indefensible and not believable whatsoever. It's clear that the writers only have the Witchers doing these things to ruin their reputation and justify the whole evil Witchers plotline that we were talking about earlier.
Now, that's stupid.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But let me explain what I mean about the training, and you can decide for yourself why you think the writers did what they did. In the Netflix Witcher universe, this is how the training cycle goes for a Witcher recruit. The kids are brought to Kaer Morhen somewhere around 8 to 12 years old, according to the anime. A little too old if you ask me, but that's not what we're here to talk about. The first thing the recruits do in the Netflix Witcher universe is spend an unknown amount of time, but no more than a few months, swinging swords at each other for seemingly no good reason, and being beaten and starved and maltreated basically the entire time.
I was beaten and starved.
I can't see any value in this time spent starving and suffering, especially when many of the kids suffering are just gonna die in the chair when it comes time for the trial of the grasses, which is why, if I was in charge, the very first step would be the trial of the grasses, to make sure the Witcher Order is not spending precious resources on recruits that will only die a short time later.
Don't be so harsh.
I know it's horrifically harsh, but the other things the Witchers make children do before the trial of the grasses makes a quick death in the chair seem a lot more appealing. Because at least if you survive the trial of the grasses, you would have your mutations. You'd have a chance. Because after a bit of pointless swordplay, like I was saying, that could always be done after the trial of the grasses, the boys are then dropped into the swamp as they are sleeping. Mutation free, which means they're doing all this painful, miserable shit without the improved reflexes, stamina, and muscle that comes with the mutations. And presumably, these kids are being dropped off by helicopter or portal or something into these swamps because the boys go to sleep in their beds at Kaer Morhen and wake up underwater in the swamp. So whoever dropped them there was able to fuck off out of there before the kids immediately woke up from being put underwater. All of that effort and energy just to throw unmutated kids into the swamps.
Why? I don't know!
The boys are given medallions for this, trial, if you can call it that, for no good reason at all that I can see. Because the medallions don't do shit for the kids, really, except give Vesemir something to cry over after he lucks his way through the swamp with all of his plot armor. No more than a memento for him to have a moment over. The only thing that could have helped these kids in the swamp situation was their mutations. You know, the mutations that Deglan and his predecessors thought would be better to hold off on in favor of a beating, starving, humiliating few months of basic torture instead of just being thrown in the chair.
You ain't fed us in days. Now you got us playing with swords.
And I think the only reason the writers even gave the kids the medallions is so that the audience can't claim that they were thrown in there with nothing. But like, that's exactly what happens. These boys are thrown into a charnel pit completely naked. The medallion doesn't mean jack shit to anyone. The damn thing can hum all it wants while the boys are being eaten alive by monsters. It's like giving someone a box of matches as they're being dropped off in the middle of the ocean. Little baby anime Vesemir says that it's about wits, not swords.
It's about wits, not swords.
But nothing could be further from the truth. This, trial is nothing but a trial of blind, dumb luck. A contest to see who has the most plot armor and luck. Even the boys that make it out of the swamp will have probably learned absolutely nothing except how to run for their lives and hide. I mean, this would all make so much more sense if the recruits went straight into the trial of the grasses and then were thrown into the swamps to see how they do. Anything else is a waste of potentially promising recruits, because you know that there's going to be recruits that get sent out into the swamp and who get killed, but who would have passed the trial of the grasses if they had only had the opportunity to take it.
What a waste.
So it makes so much more sense to put every recruit into the trial of the grasses before anything else. Because why bother training and housing kids that are only going to end up dying after they undergo the trial of the grasses?
I get it, yes.
That is the real gauntlet the recruits are supposed to go through. Adding a swamp gauntlet before the trial of the grasses means that the Witchers are going to be losing recruits that would have probably passed the more important trial of the grasses if they had only been given the chance to take it. And that kind of waste is basically unforgivable in my opinion. Only the most incompetent people would make the decision to do things the way the Witchers did in the anime. And so what does that say about the writers, I wonder?
As I said, corrupted.
I know things were kind of weird in the book and explained a little strangely, and You know, kids are brought to Kaer Morhen much younger, so yeah, there's a time in between from when they get there and when they go undergo the trial of the grasses because of the metabolism needs and all of that, but that's all explained. They explain all that in the books. But in The Nightmare of the Wolf, these boys are brought to Kaer Morhen. They look exactly the same from the moment they arrive, from the moment they go into the swamp to the moment they go into the chair. They look exactly the same, as if it's all happening within 1 year, or less.
Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
So, like, that's what I'm objecting to, is that this whole series of events is just off. The kids would probably have survived the swamp no problem after they get their mutations. Well, not no problem, but they would have had an actual chance of survival without the need of plot armor if they had their mutations. And then they might be able to actually learn something from the adventure if they're not running for their lives the entire time and are able to keep a cool head under pressure due to their mutations. Going in there with nothing, these boys would basically be operating on animal instinct and just plain fear.
On the path, a witch's first instinct is to survive.
And they're not going to remember shit besides the last place that they saw a monster, or where the last place they saw some food. There's simply no good reason to do things the way the Witchers did in the anime, other than to put the Witchers in the most negative light possible.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Because none of this shit makes any sense. I mean, look what they're doing to these kids after all. It's not just the trials, they also throw these poor unmutated kids into these deadly swamps for laughs. What a bunch of jerks, right?
It's a numbers game, young fella.
I mean, that's what I think the writers wanted everyone to think about the Witchers. Otherwise, why would they have done what they did? I can't help but feel like all of this was just to paint the Witchers as the bad guys. All of these ridiculous decisions just to make the Witchers into the bad guys. What a waste of time and energy and money this anime really is. Why couldn't Netflix have just contracted CD Projekt Red to do everything Witcher for them? I mean, could someone please tell me why in the comments? Is there a legitimate reason why Netflix couldn't have directly cooperated with the people who did The Witcher better than everyone else? I'm genuinely asking for a response to that question, because the hype would be out of this world if they did something like that. And I just can't see why they don't see that. I mean, maybe it's just fanboy wishful thinking. I don't know. Don't mind me. But I feel like the only people to ever do anything right with The Witcher was CD Projekt Red and Andrzej Sapkowski himself. Call me crazy, I guess. I don't know. Because most of what they did in regards to the Trial of the Grasses looks good and makes sense. I know, I'm just as shocked as you are to be giving praise right now.
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
As far as the actual depiction of the process, it's done well. They just administer the Trial of the Grasses after it's too little too late for many recruits. The way they show Vesemir hallucinating and being extremely sick, that was all good stuff. Accurate and visually compelling. If only they had just moved up the time where they put the kids under the Trial of the Grasses. Or at least it would have been nice if the writers organized and explained the training methods with some intelligence and planning.
That's the point.
Rather than just throwing it all in there haphazardly, not even thinking about how each training regimen should relate to another. Even if the Trial of the Grasses wasn't the first thing that the recruits did, they would have nailed the depiction of the process if they had just flushed out the ideas a bit more, spent some more time on it. They should have gone much deeper into the minutiae of what the Trial of the Grasses actually is. That's another reason why I think the anime should have been a series. They needed a lot more time to properly cover everything they tried to cram in. But the thought of an even longer version of this particular version of the story makes me want to die on the inside.
No! God, please, no! No!
A part of me already did, a little bit. An anime series depicting Nilfgaard's conquest through the south, or a different Witcher school, or even just a more accurate version of the sacking of Kaer Morhen, would have been received so much better by the fanbase. And the normies would have loved it too, as we're going to talk about later. There are so many good options that they could have gone with instead of this corrupted version of the sacking of Kaer Morhen.
As I said, corrupted.
Which was accomplished by one half-mage, half-archer, and a naked fox girl who has the reality infinity stone and control of an entire army of non-canon monsters. I feel like they could have done a whole hell of a lot better than that. Just saying.
I doubt it, but that's nice of you to say.
Give me some ideas on alternatives that you would have rather seen. Personally, I think they should have covered the Nilfgaardian War properly, so as to widen the scope of the conflict and make the world seem more alive by having multiple stories happening at the same time, instead of the boring but tried and true tactic of going back in time. Maybe I just have a different way of thinking than the rest of the world. I don't know.
Are you bragging?
We might as well move on, though. I don't know what more I can say about the trials and what they should have done. They tried to insert too many new ideas in too short of a time with too little of a care on how it fits into the wider Witcher universe. A recurring theme throughout The Nightmare of the Wolf is the idea that being a Witcher is lucrative work.
You're a Witcher. You're rich.
But at the same time, you have Deglan here complaining about how there has been a bunch of Witchers leaving the Order for more profitable ventures.
I'm down 24 Witchers this winter. Wimps found employ in other more lucrative nonsense.
Wait. What?
Without any retaliation or attempt to stop them on the part of the remaining Witchers.
But that ain't right.
Which I do not believe would be the case for a single goddamn second. So which is it? Is Witchering more lucrative than the other professions, or is it not? Like mercenary work, being an assassin, guard duty, human contract work.
Some have turned to mercenary work, others criminality. One even took a bounty on a cheating husband's head.
The books say Witchering is damn near poverty level work unless you get lucky, or you're willing to bend the rules.
Sometimes there's monsters, sometimes there's money. Rarely both. That's the life.
And the live-action show seems to support this, too, because of the clip I just showed. Making Witchering something to dream about to escape poverty.
Not many boys seem to be Witchers.
Even fewer seek a life of fetching bedpans and water.
That's just pulling shit out of your ass. Vesemir's backstory would have been a lot better if he was less worried about getting rich.
We slave away all day long, getting shout at, and the only coin we get is when we're sent to fetch them goods.
And wearing stylish clothes.
Stylish armor, by the way.
And more worried about his own survival. Vesemir did not have a difficult background compared to many kids in the Witcher universe. So I very much believe that it would have been better for the writers to just not show his childhood at all and have him talk about it in the past tense in some way and leave it up to the imagination. His life just wasn't that hard.
Just be happy you have a roof over your head and your belly's not empty.
Despite the writers clearly trying to garner sympathy for Vesemir with shit like this.
A lesser man would sell your boy to another family.
They're trying to get you to feel bad, but there really isn't much to feel bad about. You gotta look at this all comparatively speaking. It's all relative. So I have a hard time seeing why the writers just had to show a young version of Vesemir. They should have just focused on the boys.
That is obvious.
I don't know what it is with Hollywood being so obsessed with showing childhoods. They almost always undermine the audience's perception of the character when they do this, when they show childhoods.
The whole Vesemir, his past, him growing up, I at first thought, this is not important. I do not need child Vesemir. I don't need to see the little girl he had a crush on or whatever. I didn't need to see it.
Anyway, back on point. That was all besides the point. If being a Witcher is as lucrative as they make it out to be in the anime, then there would not be a bunch of Witchers switching professions.
I'm down 24 Witchers this winter. Wimps found employ in other more lucrative nonsense. Nice weight, isn't it? Fear and ignorance are good business.
You're a Witcher. You're rich.
Witchering is either underpaid or overpaid, depending on the needs of the story at that particular moment.
But you know what? It pisses me off.
I can't say I'm a fan of that policy. You know, the whole nothing is static, everything can be changed at any moment, no consistency whatsoever policy that seems to have swept up all the writers of Hollywood for the last, I don't even know how many years. Either Witchering is underpaid, like it was in the books, or it's very lucrative, like they keep on saying it is in the show. We can't have both. And we also can't have Vesemir being the sole Witcher to make good money while everyone else is in poverty. Or rather, we can, but it fucking sucks to do it like that. I know the writers wanted to have their hero look special, like he was a cut above the rest, but all they accomplished by doing this is making the other Witchers look bad. Rules for thee, not for me. Witchering is only a low-paying, dangerous job if you're one of those lowly plebs whose name is not Vesemir.
Meanwhile, I barely made enough this year to score a night with a limp prick manhole.
The writers are low-key emasculating the other Witchers, essentially, implying that none of them are even remotely on the level of Vesemir.
Lord Vesemir, my new best friend.
And that problem is true in the live-action show as well, but it's even more true here. Vesemir is shown to be this awesome, extra special, above and beyond, greater than anyone else Witcher, while everyone else is just along for the ride, basically.
I have a reputation, and a healthy estimation of my talent's worth.
And another problem with this whole subplot about Witchers leaving the Witcher Order is that Deglan just accepts that a bunch of Witchers betrayed the Witcher Order.
So we'll all be slogging more weight.
Wait, what?
He just accepts that these Witchers are leaving after getting their training and mutations to go off and give Witchers an even worse name by going around and getting involved in the affairs of society.
Some have turned to mercenary work, others criminality. One even took a bounty on a cheating husband's head.
Can you imagine how disruptive a Witcher would be to the mercenary industry? Nobody else would be able to compete. And then all of a sudden, Witchers have a really bad reputation when the honest Witchers try to take a contract. Witchers are supposed to be leaps and bounds stronger and more deadly than normal humans. The only thing that kept Witchers from taking over the goddamn world was their preoccupation with monsters, and the fact that there was so few of them, which is why I hate that Netflix keeps adding so many goddamn Witchers. If Witchers were going around making a point to insert themselves into the business of others, they would be causing all kinds of chaos, and I'd bet you anything the other remaining Witchers would be looking to hunt the exiles down to stop them from ruining the Witcher's reputation, which, need I remind you, is pretty fucking important. Read the 48 Laws of Power. Your reputation is everything. Guard it with your life. The Witcher's reputation is already tarnished enough in the books and the games. The anime seems to want to completely and utterly destroy anything positive about the Witcher's reputation.
Why are you doing this?
So my objection is not so much that Witchers are doing non-Witcher work.
Wimps found employ in other more lucrative nonsense.
It's that the existing Witchers don't seem to give much of a shit about it.
So we'll all be slogging more weight.
What? I don't know!
When they have a vested interest in making sure no one ruins their good name, or relatively good name, by doing things Witchers aren't supposed to be doing, like mercenary work, or assassination work, or whatever else.
Some have turned to mercenary work, others criminality. One even took a bounty on a cheating husband's head.
If that started to happen, the continent's opinion on Witchers would sour even further.
I told you, big mistake.
Leading to more pogroms, less contracts, and generally just a more difficult existence for the Witchers. All because the Witcher leader, Deglan, allowed a bunch of members of the Order to leave with impunity.
So we'll all be slogging more weight.
Still a big mistake.
Despite being the recipients of basically superpowers. Now, I'm not a fan of authoritarianism, but in a world that harsh, the Witchers would have to protect their interests, right? Like, they don't have much of a choice if they want to keep existing. It would have been one thing if Witchers were becoming mercenaries after the Order of Witchers is completely dissolved. That makes sense, actually. But the anime is trying to suggest that there are a bunch of Witchers abandoning the Order right in the middle of the Witchers' most prominent moment. Like, at this point in the timeline, Witchers are supposed to be at their peak.
Oh shit, that's true, it fits.
Right before the pogrom of Kaer Morhen, the School of the Wolf was supposed to be at its very strongest point in history. There were never more Witchers than there were just before the sacking of Kaer Morhen. So it makes no sense at all to have a subplot about there being a problem with Witchers leaving for more lucrative work, especially at that point in the timeline. And when you combine that with all of the shit Vesemir and Illyana said about Witchering being a super good, profitable business.
You're a Witcher. You're rich.
The coin that Witcher made last night, you should have saw it.
You end up with one big-ass contradiction.
Nice weight, isn't it? Fear and ignorance are good business.
Apparently, Witchering is only good business when the story needs it to be.
Witchers are struggling, yes, but
if only Vesemir is the one making money with Witchering, it makes all of the other Witchers look super bad.
More monsters, more jobs, more coin. Another sharp con.
Suppose let's move on to the next point, though. Sugo and his family are all very much tokenized characters. They are the only named characters of color to speak of, besides maybe Riedrich the Mage, I think, as well as the Tavern girl who has one speaking line that we're going to talk about later. Besides her, every character of color are all nothing more than blood for the blood god in the eyes of the movie.
Blood for the blood god!
Sacrifices. Nothing more. None of them play much of a part in the movie besides as tools to get the story moving. And god damn it, I'm not happy about it. Yeah, you could argue that Riedrich has a somewhat decent-sized part, but fuck off. No, he doesn't. And Sugo is one gigantic, walking, talking, wasted opportunity. He could have been one of the extra Witchers from Season 2 that Lauren just had to have in the show, only to kill them off at the end of the second season with a possessed Ciri. Who is approving this shit? Or, Sugo could have been some other interesting character that serves an actual literary purpose beyond setting the story in motion, by giving Tetra an excuse to vilify and demonize the Witchers.
Dry eyes, child. I'll see that your father and sisters are returned to you and laid to rest properly.
We could have had so much more than that. The options were limitless, and somehow we ended up here. And of course, Vesemir is written to treat Sugo like shit, to give Tetra's arguments legitimacy with the audience. Oh yeah, Vesemir did just abandon that little boy. Maybe Tetra here is right. Maybe Witchers are bad. Maybe the writers would be able to come up with a better explanation for why they did what they did. But that doesn't mean that I'm wrong either.
Witches are the offspring of foul sorcery.
No matter what way you cut it, and no matter what they say, the characters of color in this movie are nothing better than tools.
What a waste.
Also, there is no way our Vesemir would have passed up such an obvious potential recruit for Kaer Morhen. Vesemir would have taken Sugo to Kaer Morhen all day long. I stand by that. Vesemir actively lets Sugo's family die. Like, the writers have Vesemir hiding behind a tree as Sugo's family is attacked. Vesemir lets Sugo's family die. That's tantamount to murder. Like, isn't there, like, laws somewhere that say if you're able to save someone's life and you actively choose not to, that, like, the blood is on your hands? At least partially?
You let me die? That's murder.
No, not quite.
I mean, Sugo barely runs for 20 seconds before running into Vesemir. And the wannabe Leshen ghoul thing's vine is able to reach the tree right next to Vesemir when he catches up with Sugo. And Leshen roots can only go so damn far after all. That means Vesemir sat behind a nearby tree and waited for the father and little girls to be killed before he intervened. There's no fucking way that that is what Vesemir would have done. Witchers never hesitate, remember?
I told you.
A Witcher never hesitates. Oh, I know.
That saying comes more from the anime than anywhere else. So, like, what the fuck, man? They keep shoving that line down everyone's throats. So why does it not apply now?
I don't know!
And don't even try to tell me that Vesemir wasn't aware of the family being slaughtered. Witchers can hear and smell from a mile away or more sometimes.
Witchers do not hesitate.
Bull fucking shit. Vesemir couldn't hear or smell what was going on if Sugo was able to run into Vesemir after running for 10 seconds. Vesemir not helping Sugo's family was a choice.
'Cause it's not funny.
There is no other possibility for it, and our Vesemir would have never made that choice. Vesemir chose to let 4 out of 5 family members die so he could rob their corpses. How many different ways do I have to say, this is not Vesemir, before people start to understand?
Okay, Rocky, give it a shot.
The only reason any of these travesties happen at all is for the writers to establish the idea that Witchers are supposed to be evil in this version of the Witcher universe. The writers need Vesemir to do something horrible so the audience could accept the plotline of Tetra going after the Witchers and painting them as the bad guys the whole time.
Roaming our lands, voting themselves the stalkers of evil, extorting coin from the gullible.
If the writers had not done this stupid Sugo scene, the audience might be wondering why the hell Tetra has such a bone up her ass for the Witchers. And then to top it all off, the writers throw in the bullshit about Tetra's backstory.
A silly sorceress who'd crossed a gullible priest.
Bullshit! No fucking way!
But we're going to talk about that later on. Basically, though, the TLDR for this section is that Sugo and his family are nothing more than tokenized tools created only to get the story moving. They should have had a much bigger role in the movie. It's bullshit that they don't. Sugo, at the very least, should have had a much bigger role. Also, I want to point out, because of all of this tokenization bullshit, that means at least definitely Lauren, and perhaps maybe Beau, are also hypocrites. Because Lauren, especially, has done nothing but preach about the importance of inclusion the entire time she has been a part of the Witcher project.
Do I believe it's the right thing? I do. I really do.
So for her to approve something so egregiously shitty as the Sugo plotline is actually quite hilarious from my point of view. And it does indeed make her a hypocrite. Lauren is all about inclusion, until it means actually creating an original character of color who does something important and who does not erase the legacy of a beloved character in the process. Lauren is entirely incapable of that so far, despite her outspoken desire to make The Witcher as inclusive as possible. Lauren and Beau really only know how to create characters of color as long as they are ruining an existing character. Creating new characters of color is simply so far outside of their wheelhouse as to be considered impossible for them. Also, the song Sugo sings in the very beginning of the movie is so awful and terrible I don't quite have the words to describe it. Oh wait, yes I do. It's fucking awful!
There once was a lord in dark woods wearing a strange silver band.
It's clearly a ripoff of the Lullaby of Woe.
Was asleep amidst the trees.
Which is a far better song in every single way. And the lyrics to Sugo's song barely fit together on the best of days, words being stretched to their limits to make the song work. Ugh. I hate every second of it, and I tend to skip that song whenever I watch the anime, which is a lot. So yeah, anyway, point is, Lauren's a hypocrite, Sugo is a tokenized character, and this all should have been done differently right from the very beginning.
And for years I had a lot of trouble finding myself in fantasy.
Moving on, let's keep going. I told you we would be talking about Luka soon. Many, probably a huge portion of you, are huge fans of Luka. By no means am I trying to come in here and shit on Luka as an objectively awful character. Of course not. Luka is not the worst character to ever exist, and he's certainly not the best either. But he isn't bad. There's a lot the writers could have done with Luka, but chose not to for whatever reasons, so I very much feel that he was a waste, just like so many other characters. He is entertaining enough on screen, I guess. His speaking lines kind of suck a limp prick.
A limp prick manhole.
But that's not Luka's fault, it's the writer's fault. They had the ingredients for something awesome with Luka, but they squandered it by using him in much the same way as they used Sugo, as a tool to get the story moving, without much more importance than that.
So we've heard.
Vesemir reacts to Luka's death when he hears about it, but after that, it's forgotten.
And Luka? This is your two's doing.
And Deglan doesn't even really give a shit.
They're always gonna come, sooner or later.
My point is that the writers did Luka dirty in multiple ways. The first way is simple. Luka should have had a much bigger role, with more speaking lines, more action, and more importance to the story, besides being the one to kick off the final battle by getting executed.
Your Highness.
And making gay jokes.
The limp prick manhole.
The other way they fucked over Luka was by portraying his struggle as much the same as everyone else's. Luka would have had way more problems than any of the other Witchers, and the writers owed it to Luka and every other LGBTQ person out there to properly portray how hard it would have been to be gay in a world like the Witchers. And I maintain this argument from a racial perspective as well. If you are a member of the LGBTQ community, or if you're a person of color, please tell me in the comments, what would you rather the writers do? Would you rather have the writers act like being gay or black is a cakewalk with no problems at all, or would you rather have the writers properly portray how difficult it is to be yourself in a world full of bigots? There is no wrong answer, of course. I'm sure there would be people who would agree and disagree. I just want to know what you guys think. The writers proclaim to be the greatest allies of the LGBTQ community and of people of color everywhere.
Do I believe it's the right thing? I do. I really do.
But the decisions the writers make seems to give all of society a pass for the horrors we have put people of color and LGBTQ people through over the centuries. Again, like I said earlier, this argument applies to minorities of all kinds. I know it might seem better on the surface to show everyone singing Kumbaya with each other and having everyone be perfectly tolerant and PC on screen all the time. But I can't help but feel like that is far more destructive to the cause of ending racism and bigotry than showing the way the world would have actually been. If everything they make says there is no bigotry in the world, people are going to start believing that that's true, when there is still very much a shitload of work to do when it comes to making the world a more equitable society. The Witcher universe is based on our own. The people on the continent are supposed to have originated from medieval Europe, or sometime from thousands of years ago. So like, the people living on the continent are very much supposed to be the people from Earth, and we all have plenty of bigotry in us. You cannot take it out of us completely. Not really. Anyone who claims otherwise is being dishonest, and they're trying to deceive you. I swear. We all have the capacity for racism and bigotry within us. We just direct it towards other groups that are deemed as okay to hate. Like political groups. Instead of hating people based on race, you hate based on ideology. But that's still hate. We all still have that hate within us. But for whatever horrible reason, the writers have decided to portray society as completely and utterly free of bigotry, directed towards traditional minority groups. There's plenty of bigotry towards dwarves and elves, but there's none towards traditional minority groups. I'm not sure if they did this thinking they were doing a good thing, but I am here to emphatically argue that it's not a good thing at all. In fact, it's downright counterproductive, even more so than if the writers were to be overtly racist themselves. My whole entire grand point in this whole thing is that the writer's choice to portray society in The Witcher as free of their bigotry and hatred towards marginalized groups, like people of color and LGBTQ people, is objectively wrong and harmful to the very cause Lauren Hissrich proclaimed to support.
Do I believe it's the right thing? I do. I really do.
They are giving society a pass when they owed it to all marginalized groups to portray the suffering they would have went through if the world of The Witcher was real. And make no mistake, even if the Netflix Witcher universe was real, there would be rampant racism and bigotry towards anyone who wasn't part of the dominant group, even if the writers and directors want to pretend none of that is happening. In reference to Luka specifically, no way would Luka being gay be so easily brushed off as normal by everyone else at Kaer Morhen.
I barely made enough this year to score a night with a limp prick manhole.
Your woes break me, Luka.
Humanity is just too fucking shitty for that to be the case. Portraying organizations like the Witchers as progressives and as accepting towards LGBTQ rights squanders the chance the writers had to teach the audience a lesson or two about how hard gay men would have had it in an organization like the Witchers during a time like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just totally missing the mark here, and if that's the case, someone please come in and correct me. If it really is totally fine to absolve society of its crimes, then it's probably going to happen. I hope not, though, because society does not fucking deserve absolution. We deserve to be shown exactly what society was like in the past, lest we forget about our collective crimes. No individual is guilty of those crimes, of course, but we as a society are guilty. The only way to overcome that guilt is by confronting it and not shying away from it. The Witcher's creators need to remember the world of The Witcher is not a parallel to the modern world. It was never supposed to be a parallel, and society deserves to be shamed for what we did in the past. The best way to do that is through movies and TV. So Lauren, if you want to make a real difference, show the world what it would have been like to be gay or black in the Witcher world, rather than acting like everything would have been all good in the hood for people of color and LGBTQ folks.
Do I believe it's the right thing? I do. I really do.
When we all know without a shadow of a doubt that life for them in the Witcher universe would have been anything but good in the hood. I argue that if you want to preach about being progressive and supportive of the cause, like Lauren has proclaimed publicly before many times, then you have a duty to portray the world in all of its brutality and horribleness.
That's the point.
Especially when you are creating content for a platform that does not have to abide by the MPAA and censorship rules traditional TV channels would have had to put up with. Netflix is uniquely suited to showcase the reality of what people of color and LGBTQ folks would have went through in a world like the Witcher universe. They don't have to worry about constrictive censorship rules. They could have showed whatever they wanted. If we were able to see how disgusting our ancestors would have been, then we might strive to be better than they were. But if we pretend like our ancestors were as progressive as we are, then we are essentially absolving them of their crimes and telling their victims to shove it up their ass and stay quiet. If that was what Lauren had in mind, then fair enough. She succeeded, but that's pretty shitty and contradictory to all the virtue signaling she did on Twitter however long ago.
Do I know that not everyone's happy with it? Yeah. But I still feel really strongly that it's the right decision for the story that we're telling.
Well, it's not.
Netflix has been underplaying the power of mages the entire time, right from the start of the flagship show, to the anime, to the very end of Season 2, and likely anything else they make in the future. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I doubt it. The anime should have been the ones to ramp up the power of mages to 11, but for whatever horrible, miserable, inconceivable reason, the writers have decided to crank up the power of the Witcher's signs instead.
Why?
Again, for no good reason that I can see, other than because they think it looks cool. If you also feel that way, fuck you. No, I'm kidding. I don't hate you. I just don't understand why you feel the way you do. I respect your opinion, but I very much disagree. Animes do not need to break every rule of the lore to be fun to watch. The anime medium is perfect for storytelling, and if only they had done it with care and respect to the lore, we might have had something really special.
Well, it's not.
But instead, we end up with an anime that only chooses to be The Witcher when it's convenient, and it's barely The Witcher when it does try.
That's the point.
I mean, as always, maybe I'm missing something. Please fill me in if I am. I don't mind being wrong and looking like an asshole. I just want to get to the bottom of the issue. So maybe there is someone out there that can explain why it's better for Witchers to be more proficient in magic than mages themselves.
You are dumb. It is the exact opposite.
I mean, Witchers have more of a command of fire magic than most mages, according to the Netflix universe, and I cannot figure out why they think it's better that way.
I don't know!
If mages can't use fire, then neither should Witchers be able to, because according to Tetra, Witchers are connected to chaos as well.
Witchers are connected to chaos too. Only your connection is corrupted and corrosive.
And far less condemning.
Just fucking call it magic. So that means that they should be bound by the same rules. So why are mages pussies in the Netflix universe, despite how superior they always talk and act, while Witchers are depicted as more powerful than most mages in the use of magic in the anime? Like really, Tetra uses her stupid fucking bow more than she does actual spells. Tetra should have been showcasing to the world what mages can do. Instead, all we get is her doing some dumbass moves with her bow and some bullshit dancing routine to start an avalanche. No other mage needs to dance to get their spells going. So to my mind, that means Tetra is even less talented than the others. If she needs to fucking dance to get the spell off, the anime was the perfect opportunity to show the world just how badass mages are. Instead, all of the cool magic visuals come from the Witchers. So when I say the writers are undermining the power of mages, I mean it. They also do this in the live action show, opting to have sorceresses like Yennefer swing swords around rather than use magic.
Good sir, I'm a beacon of purity.
It's more forgivable in the live-action show, though, because they are trying to save on the budget. But I still maintain that it's better to have sorceresses doing magic and everyone else doing the martial moves, like archery and sword fighting. Yes, you could justify sorceresses using bows and swords, but why would you want to do that?
Why are you doing this?
It's a competition among mages to see who can do the most magical crazy shit while making it look like they aren't doing anything at all. Mages want to look like they don't need to lift a finger to whoop everyone's ass. So why are the writers of the anime and the show doing everything they can to undermine that.
Well, it doesn't hurt to ask.
I mean, wouldn't it look so much more badass if Tetra or Yennefer just walked onto the battlefield, lifted their hands, and suddenly the world has gone mad? The elements turn on everyone but the beautiful sorceress, who stands in the middle with her hands raised, eyes closed, motionless as she concentrates. Wouldn't that be so much greater than if that sorceress was to just swing swords around like everyone else, or shoot arrows like everyone else, except extra fast? I mean, ask any general or tactician to ever live. If they had a sorceress who could do pretty much anything without getting into the thick of battle, ask them if they would rather have her fighting with the boys, or in the back, bringing forth a lightning acid storm with sharks in it or something, or teleporting swaths of the enemy into the bottom of the ocean. I mean, which one do you think they would choose? I'm talking about any smart thinking person who, fancies themselves a tactician. No rational person anywhere would say that it's a good idea to go fight with the grunts over having the sorceress do what sorceresses do, which is to say, whoop everyone's ass without having to do much more than lift a finger and concentrate real hard. This argument applies to pretty much all mages ever depicted in the Netflix universe, but I'm mostly referring to Tetra and Yennefer for the sake of this video. Tetra specifically, though, has no good valid reason to spend any real amount of time studying how to use a bow when she could be spending that time increasing her command of magic. I know a lot of you will say that it's good to have a backup skill in case you lose your powers, but that's an idea that was only ever introduced by the live action show. That shit's fucking stupid if you ask me.
I didn't ask you and I don't care.
Mages did not lose their goddamn powers. That's just not how the magic system works in the books and the other mediums of the Witcher universe. So, like, I have a hard time thinking of these questions as, like, obeying the rules of the Netflix universe, because that shit doesn't make any fucking sense. It's mages don't think like that. They wouldn't be thinking, well, what if I lose my powers? Like, the only time that's ever happened is Yennefer. Pretty sure. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I mean, I feel like mages would all know full well that training in other martial schools, like archery or sword fighting, could only ever give them marginal gains. Whereas, if they spend their time studying magic, or increasing their political power, they could get a whole hell of a lot more accomplished. Basically, my point is that fighting with swords and bows is beneath mages. They are literally better than that. They have higher concerns, and any mage would laugh at another mage who wasted their time playing with bows and arrows while the rest of them are shaping nations and toppling dynasties and carving a bloody path through history. The anime's desire to show Tetra as a bow-wielding battle mage can only ever detract from her status as a mage, and every moment Tetra spends shooting a bow is another missed opportunity to showcase how powerful mages are. I am arguing here that it is objectively worse for all parties involved, except the enemies of the character in question, for mages to use martial weapons like bows, crossbows, and even muskets or swords or whatever. Of course, there are going to be niche situations in a mage's life when they would want to, and would need to, be able to use a bow and sword. There's no denying that at all. But mages can use a bow and swords, or any other weapon, whenever they want to, and they can use magic to skill themselves up, at least to a level of some proficiency. So they have no need at all to train. But that does not mean that the creators of the show or the anime should have casters using martial weapons. Just because you can explain them using martial weapons doesn't mean that you should have them do it, right? And because they can skill themselves up, that means that they have no need to ever train. So there's no need to have Tetra using a bow. It's just, there's just so much better uses of her time and skill and energy. And plus, the audience is never going to be able to appreciate bullshit cop-out spells like, quote-unquote, improving my bow skill with magic spell, as opposed to a mage using a spell like a magic tornado, or a mage controlling a flurry of swords with their mind, levitating them and shit. That would be cool. The options are limitless with magic. They could have attacks based on all of the elements, and they could get real creative if they wanted to. All they would have to do is pull the goddamn swords and bows from the hands of the mages and give them the green light, meaning CGI, to do magic. The anime has no excuse whatsoever to have put a bow in Tetra's hands. Tetra should have been moving mountains throughout the entire anime, and she barely does any magic in this movie. Tetra uses her bow more than anything else. It's just that she can do it a lot faster because of magic. But I'm telling you, she should have been, a whole hell of a lot more dangerous and effective using magic.
No shit, Sherlock.
Like real, actual magic spells that aren't just an improvement on her bow use. The fight between her and Vesemir should not have even been a fight. She's a fucking mage, dude. She should have wiped the floor with him telepathically. Literally. Like, that's why I keep saying that we didn't need Kitsu. Tetra should have been able to do all this nearly by herself, or at least with a handful of other mages. Giving mages martial weapons just makes them like everyone else, and no one wants that. Everyone has a role, and everyone should strive to be the best at their own role, whatever it might be. Be the master of one, not the master of none. Let mages be mages, and witchers be witchers, the best swordsmen on the planet. Let the dryads be the best archers, with my girl Milva, who's coming to the show in season 3, topic for another time though. The show and the anime both just assumes that you will accept whatever they decide to do and move on, which, to be fair, is exactly what most of you are going to do.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
In the books and games, a small group of mages and a band of angry peasants was all that was needed to bring down the Order of Witchers at Kaer Morhen. Not because witchers are pussies, but because mages are so unbelievably strong. That's how the Netflix Witcher universe should have been as well. Witchers are the focus of the story, but mages are the true powerhouses in the Witcher universe. In the Netflix universe, mages are so pathetically weak that they need the help of an army of monsters just to take the Witchers down. And that's just plain pathetic, going by mage standards. All of this is so obscenely against the established lore, and it has the added miserable side effect of making mages look like a bunch of blowhard bitches that do nothing but talk a big game.
We're mages, damn powerful ones.
Apparently not.
Because when push comes to shove, they start swinging swords like everyone else, except for Yennefer, who is the sole representative of a powerful mage anywhere in the Netflix universe. In the case of Tetra, she is said to have the extra special fire magic power that only her and Yennefer have so far.
Only insofar as there are very few mages blessed with the skill to control the flames.
But she never fucking uses it on screen. Why? I have no goddamn idea. Mages should have been leaps and bounds stronger than their portrayal anywhere in the Netflix Witcher universe so far, aside from the Yennefer fire scene.
Fucking politics!
You know, whoop-de-fucking-do. The rest of the mages are still pussies. Making witchers stronger than mages in the art of magic just adds insult to injury. What we should have seen for the Battle of Kaer Morhen is a cabal of scary, professional, and ruthless court mages, each with their own motivations and schemes, all cooperating to take down the witchers for political gain. So the mages can showcase their strength to everybody, wipe out a potential rival, and further make the world depend on mages for help all in one blow by slaughtering the witchers. All of this at the behest of Kaedwen's ruler so he can get rid of a financial obligation the crown could no longer afford. That sounds a whole hell of a lot more interesting than what we saw, because then we could have seen the mages turn on each other at the end as Kaer Morhen is burning down, or something. Anything other than what they chose to do. Like making the witchers the bad guys, turning the king into a blithering idiot, having only one mage to speak of, who sucks really bad for a lot of reasons. The mages that are present don't do anything exciting or impressive, and the witchers do a whole bunch of magic they should not have been able to do. But the mages get none of that. Are you happy, Beau? What we ended up with is one guy's fan fiction, Beau DeMaio's fan fiction.
God, he sucks.
Created by a team of people who either don't know what The Witcher is, or who don't give two shits about it, even if they do know what it is. It's just another IP to slap their name on and make some money from. So they don't care. Maybe I am being a bit too harsh and cynical. I totally accept that. I have become a bit jaded through the making of this video. That's true. I don't want you to discount my arguments because of how jaded and cynical I am. Maybe my worst predictions are wrong, but, you know, a lot of the arguments I'm making probably aren't wrong. At least, I don't think they are. But I know that some of the predictions I make are probably a bit too harsh and cynical to be true. Perhaps Beau had good intentions. I mean, like I said way earlier, if that's the case, then he's just incompetent, I guess. And he was the wrong person to have at the helm for this adaptation, at least from my perspective. I mean, maybe you disagree. I'd love to see your reasoning for why, because assuming the best in people is simply not enough of a defense here. Mages should have been much more powerful than the witchers. That's the point I want you to leave here with. That's the entire point of this section.
I get it, yes.
I think this is a bit too big of a plot hole to just be overlooked and ignored as an unimportant side detail that only book fans care about. This is one point that I think all of you will have to concede because it's pretty ironclad. At least in my view it is. I fully accept that my reality could very well be different from the rest of the world. So if I'm wrong, please tell me, by all means. And be sure to leave a scathing personal insult with it too.
Or don't. Shit, I don't care.
Anyway, let me ask you this. How does Tetra the Mage have a sorceress for a mother? Think about it for a second.
There is a cost to all creation. A sacrifice that is always made. To be reborn, you will bear no more.
Think about Yennefer's plotline throughout the flagship live-action show.
They made us sterile for a lot of reasons. What could you possibly want with a child?
They took my choice. I want it back.
Think about Geralt's mother, too. Do you see where I'm heading?
Stop it, Geralt.
What did Aretuza take from Yennefer and all female mages?
They took my choice.
In the Netflix Witcher universe, that she wanted back so badly, but would never get back at all, according to villain Trettenmirth.
The sorceress will never regain her womb.
I ask again, how is Tetra's mother a sorceress?
The silly sorceress who'd crossed a gullible priest.
That doesn't make any sense.
Riddle me that, please. And how is Geralt's mother a sorceress?
I don't know, man.
If sorceresses are supposed to lose their reproductive organs when they get their enchantments, how is Tetra's mother a sorceress?
I don't know!
How is Geralt's mother a sorceress?
I don't know!
Maybe I'm smoking too much weed. Maybe I'm simply too zonked to see the answer right in front of me. Maybe I'm thicker than that super dense wood that I saw a YouTube Shorts clip of with that weird name. So maybe I just can't see the obvious answer. If that's the case, please, someone tell me. But it seems to me that Tetra's mother could not possibly be a sorceress because Aretuza removes the entire uterus through the vagina somehow with a damn scalpel. I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure they did it wrong. Anyway, Tetra's mother has to have been trained at Aretuza from a young age, just like all other sorceresses. I mean, that's firmly established in the Netflix Witcher universe. There are no other types of sorceresses just yet, and if they add one just for Tetra's mom, I'll be mad. Do not try to pull that shit, Netflix.
Captain, please do not do that.
The only way Netflix would be able to explain this discrepancy of Tetra's mother being a sorceress is if they come in and start retconning stuff or adding little bullshit caveats to explain their mistake. Oh, but Tetra's mom was the one sorceress that didn't have to go through all of those mandatory rituals.
Now, that's stupid.
I mean, that would be one weak-ass cop-out. Please do not do that, Netflix.
No!
Just revert the whole mages can't have babies thing and go with what the book did, where mages can have babies, but shouldn't because it causes all kinds of medical problems if the children are not taught how to control their source, leading to miserable lives of squalor and abuse at the hands of society due to mental illness. You know, much like the mentally ill of today. That would make for a much more interesting and topical lesson for society. They could show mages having babies recklessly for various reasons, and showing what happens as a result. They could amp up the medical downsides from mages having children, and they could really tell some compelling stories with it. They could have some mages pushing for mandatory sterilization, and some other mages pushing to keep the status quo, just like how it was in the books. The options are vast, and Netflix limited themselves by saying, nope, mages can't have babies because we want Yennefer to want to have a baby.
What could you possibly want with a child?
They took my choice. I want it back.
And she can't have one, so no mages can have babies. That's just way too predictable and boring, honestly. And it limits the options available to the writers. Not good. And then you end up in a position like they are in right now, where the writers broke their own dumb rule by having Tetra's mother be a sorceress.
The silly sorceress who'd crossed a gullible priest.
Yennefer could have had her baby fever plotline while other mages were able to have babies. There was no need to have an ironclad no children for mages rule that you guys immediately broke with the first spin-off outside of the flagship show.
They made us sterile for a lot of reasons.
Why limit yourselves so early by establishing these pregnancy rules for sorceresses? There could have been so much nuance here, and there could have been a moral debate going on about the idea of having babies knowing the effects will not be good. I mean, that's a debate worth having. But the writers chickened out completely and opted to just make it so that no mages could have babies.
Don't ask questions.
And before anybody even says it, don't even try to tell me that Tetra's relationship with her mom was adoptive. Bullshit. That's a cop-out. I need the writers to admit that they overlooked this, and I also want them to admit the missed opportunity that this was, but that's just asking too much. The TLDR is that Tetra's mom cannot be a sorceress, not with what's been established in the live-action show already. Moving on. The problem that I have with Tetra's childhood is simply this. I don't buy it at all. At all.
I'm not buying it.
I think it's a crock of shit sounding story, right on the face of it. And that's not even considering the contradictions that her story creates for the Netflix Witcher universe.
The monster slayer believed the sickness was in fact a curse, and could be lifted by killing whoever placed it. The priest quickly fingered a local sorceress, a stupid girl who always caused him trouble. The Witcher killed her, and was rightly paid in gems and jewels.
Rambles about being a descendant of the first human mage.
If someone told me Tetra's backstory, never mind that it's in the world of The Witcher and 1,000 years ago, I would not believe a word of it.
Because I think you're full of shit.
No matter how sincere or upset she gets when she tells it.
I didn't know that the Witcher sensed me in the cupboard, trembling, barely breathing, watching as he drove his sword through my mother.
Bullshit!
I don't believe Tetra's backstory because it sounds unbelievable on the face of it. And mages are known to lie. And because mages are supposed to be more than victims. Many do have tragic backstories, but they make up for the pain they endure with innocent blood spilled.
Another monstrosity.
Attempted murder.
Which means that they are no longer victims. Tetra is no different. That's a big part of why I doubt her story. Another reason I don't believe her story is because I don't believe Vesemir, even this super shitty version, would ever do that. Especially not the game or book versions of Vesemir. He would never kill an innocent woman in cold blood like that.
Not in a million years.
And I still doubt anime Vesemir would do it too, even though he is kind of a piece of shit. And calling Tetra's mother an innocent woman is a stretch. Tetra's mother is a sorceress too.
A silly sorceress who'd crossed a gullible priest.
So she is far from innocent. I don't care how little we know about her. If she's a sorceress, she has dirty hands. Then there is the issue of a Witcher killing a sorceress without any trouble.
A stupid girl who always caused him trouble.
That should be completely impossible. It's actually insulting to insinuate that a Witcher could just up and murder a sorceress without any problems.
Stop the cap!
I know the games make fans think that Witchers can kill sorceresses no problem, but that's Geralt doing those things. He had extra mutations and is clearly far above Vesemir in fighting prowess. Geralt might be able to kill some mages with great difficulty, but that does not mean all Witchers are going to be able to kill sorceresses. Tetra makes it sound like Vesemir came in and killed her mother right in front of her, as if her mother couldn't do anything about it.
Watching as he drove his sword through my mother.
You're full of shit.
She doesn't say anything about spells or destruction or anything. So I call bullshit. Sorceresses are much stronger than Witchers. Or at least, they fucking should be.
We're mages. Damn powerful ones.
Apparently not.
Another reason I don't believe Tetra is because of the stupid claims she makes about her lineage. She claims that she is descended from the first human mage. A distinct and accomplished lineage, I imagine.
Rambles about being a descendant of the first human mage.
So how is it that someone with such a weighty family name could be straight up murdered by a Witcher without the Witcher getting in any trouble for it?
That's a very good question.
I mean, there are still laws, you know. The world might be harsh in the Witcher universe, but there's still rules. And the big, influential families don't want the little people to forget their place. So you can bet your ass that at least something would have been done if Tetra's story really did happen.
The Witcher killed her and was rightly paid in gems and jewels.
Would you say you're completely full of shit or just 50%?
Mages are just too powerful and too influential to be killed off like that without anyone doing anything about it. Other mages would have intervened if no one else. If Tetra's mother was trained at Aretuza, like Tetra was, which they should have been if they're calling themselves sorceresses, that means that they would have had countless contacts and connections with people all over the continent. Tetra and her mother both would have been deeply involved with the politics of whatever area they lived in. And if they didn't, the writers need to address that shit when they start introducing dumb backstories like Tetra's.
You have made a serious error.
So basically, Tetra's story has too many holes in it to be believed, in my opinion.
Acknowledging the problem means admitting that they lied.
The writers do their best to make her look and sound sad, but that doesn't mean jack shit when what she is actually saying makes no sense at all. I do not for 1 second believe that Tetra is a legitimate heir to the first human mage, and you shouldn't either.
Rambles about being a descendant of the first human mage.
My biological father is George Washington. A little more famous, he's on the dollar bill.
Because like I said, the writers can have Tetra be whoever the hell they want, and there isn't a damn thing I or anyone else can do about it, really, besides laugh and make fun of every decision they make, which is why I'm here. So yeah, I don't believe it. I feel like the only reason anyone is saying that Tetra is related to the first human mage is because the writers wanted to lend Tetra some kind of credibility or gravitas, while making her out to be a long-standing member of the status quo. Someone who benefits from the world being owned by mages. But I don't think that there was much more thought put into it than that. Yeah, if we say she's descended from the first human mage, people are gonna have no choice but to take her more seriously. Oh, and also give her purple eyes. Wait, why purple eyes though? You're fired for asking, but because Yennefer has them. Duh. But like, if Tetra is the only person with purple eyes, and she is supposed to be from the first human mage, that implies that Yennefer is as well. And you have a problem with that? No problem, just I didn't realize that this was the Disney Star Wars trilogy, where you need to have a magic grandfather in order to be powerful. I am on my knees, praying, kowtowing again and again to the almighty blood god in the sky that rules over us all with an iron fist, all hail his mighty power, that the writers or demonic hellspawn creatures, whoever they actually are, I pray that they do not try to make Yennefer or Tetra related to the same magic grandpa from some 1500 years prior, or whatever.
Captain? Please do not do that.
If they do that, though, it will be one more contradiction, because mages are supposed to be sterile in the Netflix Witcherverse. You guys made your bed, now sleep in it. So please, we do not need any more magic grandpas. The Disney Star Wars trilogy already used and reused the magic grandpa thing, and I, for one, am fully over the whole biological connections being the thing that matters most shtick. I'm tired of it. We have Ciri for our character with magical heritage, and that's plenty enough. Of course, I can't stop them from giving Tetra and Yennefer the same magic grandpa, but god damn it, I hope they don't.
No! God, please, no! No!
Alright, so because of this scene right here, we have a serious problem to talk about.
Oh, tell him about the time you swindled the Redanian priest. Had him thinking he was cursed.
The writers clearly want us to believe that Vesemir was the one to kill Tetra's mom. What reason is there to have Vesemir be a cold-blooded murderer?
I have no idea.
Like, why would the writers want that? Why would Vesemir need to con or murder anyone in cold blood when he's such a successful witcher? The most successful witcher.
Stop trying to demonize the hero and drum up fake sympathy for the villain.
Obviously, other people saw him do this. There must have been witnesses. That would have been one gigantic stain on his reputation. That's cold-blooded murder. And the Witcher that Tetra's talking about is the architect of the entire plan. So that means Vesemir would have came in there, initiated the cold-blooded con right from the beginning, and then killed the fucking woman. Like, no, that's too far. That's too much. That would ruin his character forever and beyond repair. And more importantly, what value does it add to the story? Not everything needs to be linked together. There is such a thing as too many coincidences. And besides, Vesemir does not, even once, show any kind of remorse or guilt or recognition for killing Tetra's mother.
He had the cook poison the priest's meals, cut him in on the take. Smart con. Wish I'd thought of it.
You swindled the Redanian priest.
It's like he did it while he was sleepwalking or something. Because clearly he has no memory of it at all. Or he's the greatest actor on the planet.
I doubt it. The priest obviously got better.
No thanks to you.
Or he is a complete fucking psychopath. Because the writers do demonstrate that Vesemir does have a conscience.
Oh, the witch has found his morals.
Otherwise, why would he have let Filavandrel go with the experimented on girl?
Take the child and go. No.
Was that all just an act to make everybody else, including the audience, think that he has emotion of any kind? Because clearly he's a fucking monster if he can kill Tetra's mother in cold blood after conning a fucking guy. That shit is against the Witcher code start to finish in the first place. And Vesemir does care about the code because he's the one who stops Deglan from creating monsters.
You have to burn it to the ground, or I will.
Would you say you're completely full of shit or just 50%?
If Vesemir was the one to con Tetra's mother, Vesemir would have never stopped Deglan from creating monsters. He would have joined him and helped him and kept it going.
No shit, Sherlock.
And honestly, as for the murder, cold-blooded murder without any hint of remorse or doubt about what you've done, that, to me, means that you are indisputably, fundamentally a bad person. And that's not Vesemir. It's just not.
Some things are beyond cost.
You're full of shit.
I think that covers it, right? I brought this up a bit earlier, but I feel like I should talk about it more at length. Tetra is a self-described master of fire magic, much to my annoyance.
Isn't fire magic forbidden by upstanding mages?
Only insofar as there are very few mages blessed with the skill to control the flames.
The writers make sure to have Tetra bloviate about fire magic, but there is no point where she actually puts said fire magic to use in the movie.
That's stupid, okay?
Other than the scene where she initially talks about it around the campfire with Vesemir. That's the only time we see Tetra doing anything with fire. In the final battle, she does nothing but throw up a bunch of portals and shoot arrows at point-blank range, missing every single time. Wouldn't it have been better to just burn Vesemir to a crisp? Or hold him still with telekinesis as you deliver a spooky, scary monster villain speech?
A silly sorceress who'd crossed a gullible priest.
Bullshit! No fucking way!
I mean, how many different options were there? You know, Tetra is supposed to be a mage. But Skag, that's not how movies work. Especially animes. There needs to be a big climactic final battle with crazy visuals. Okay, fine. So why the hell didn't they do any of that?
I don't know!
The final battle has portals and exposition and music, but it is awfully short on common sense and crazy awesome visuals. Pretty boring visually to me, actually. Tetra should have at least tried to use fire magic on Vesemir. The writers could have come up with some kind of literary excuse for why fire magic couldn't work on Vesemir for the final battle. I don't know what, but I'm not the one that's hellbent on making Tetra a fire mage either. The term fire mage shouldn't even be a thing either, honestly. All mages can use fire in the Witcher lore. They're just not allowed to pull from fire. But that's a topic for another day, and I've talked about it before already a little bit. So anyway, foreshadowing that never ends up leading to anything is one of the worst things a writer can do in a big budget movie, to my way of thinking. I mean, we're not talking about some amateur indie project being made by 3 people. This was made by a professional-ass team with talent. They set up the fire magic foreshadowing around the campfire, and then they never capitalized on it.
Only insofar as there are very few mages blessed with the skill to control the flames.
Is there a more cardinal sin of movie making than uncapitalized foreshadowing? I'm asking because I have no idea. It definitely doesn't seem ideal, I have to say. In fact, it seems like a straight up fucking waste.
What a waste.
I don't know how else to describe it, honestly. They spent all of that time and energy trying to establish that Tetra is one of these extra special fire mages we hear so much about in the Netflix Witcher universe, and then they never, even once, capitalize on all of that foreshadowing. I could just keep saying that incredulously over and over again, and it would feel super good to do each time, because I at least know I have a point here. But that's not gonna accomplish anything, and nobody wants to hear it.
I get it, yes.
In The Nightmare of the Wolf, Vesemir has far more command of the elements than 90% of the mages in the Netflix Witcher universe so far, including Tetra.
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
The only evidence we have of Tetra being a powerful mage is her word. And sorry, but that's just not good enough, baby. And she's the only mage that has to do a bunch of dancing to get her spells off. Don't even try to tell me that she's some sort of extra powerful mage. Nobody else has to do that shit. That's an extra added step that would end up getting her killed. And starting an avalanche is, like, that happens by accident, dude. You could throw a rock on the wrong day, on the wrong side of the mountain, and start an avalanche. And you're telling me Tetra's gotta build up all of this magical energy to start an avalanche like that? Bullshit.
Bullshit! No fucking way!
I really hated the dancing. I'm sorry, guys. The dancing was so stupid. It was so stupid. Moving on. Pick a lane. I wish the writers would just pick a lane for Tetra. Either she is a bow-wielding badass with a tragic past and an understandable motivation, or she is a powerful extra special fire mage. Why do they have to make fire magic special?
I have no idea.
Or she's an extra special fire mage with a backstory that's much more typical to a mage that you would find in the Witcher universe. You know, looking for political power, personal gain, rewriting history, you know, shit like that. Have Tetra be one or the other, so she can be a really good one or the other. My argument for this is far from perfect, and I'm sure there's people out there that could argue to the contrary. It's all a matter of opinion at the end of the day. But to me, there was no good reason at all to have Tetra wielding a bow and arrow.
I have no idea how it happened.
All that's going to accomplish is undermining the audience's perception of her. She must not be that powerful of a mage if she needs to use the bow all the time and needs to dance to get big spells off.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Again, I know some of you would argue to the contrary, but mages using a bow is kind of like having an attack helicopter pilot engage the enemy by shooting his sidearm out the side of the cockpit while he flies over. You can argue that there's value to doing that, but I don't think you would be right. Let Tetra use her minigun and rockets, so to speak, so the world can see what she is made of. Because right now, Tetra seems more like a lying braggart that wants you to think that she is an expert in magic and has some impressive long lineage, when really, she only knows how to do a few different spells and is probably some gutter rat like every other mage in the Witcher universe. I know some mages come from a long distinguished line, but many don't. Many come from humble beginnings, and that's where Tetra came from too. I don't believe this bullshit about her coming from the first fucking human mage. Bullshit.
No fucking way!
Because right now, Tetra seems more like a lying braggart that wants you to think she is an expert in magic with a long, distinguished lineage worthy of respect.
I doubt it.
When really, she only knows how to do a few different spells and is a gutter rat like a huge chunk of the other mages in the lore. Portals, creating ice barriers out of wind, both pretty useful, not gonna lie, and spells to augment her bow skills. Those are really the only moves Tetra knows. Oh, and dancing to make avalanches. But she desperately wants you to think that she knows a million different spells and can do all kinds of crazy shit, but she never demonstrates it. And she never proves it. Instead, she wants to shoot her bow around and look like a dumbass. From my perspective, the writers really should have just picked a lane for Tetra. There is also the issue that mages are basically incapable of being victims in the Witcher universe. And yet, the writers of The Nightmare of the Wolf have done everything they can to try and paint Tetra as the real victim.
The silly sorceress who'd crossed a gullible priest. The Witcher killed her and was rightly paid in gems and jewels.
Stop trying to demonize the hero and drum up fake sympathy for the villain.
That's contradictory to the themes of the book on like a fundamental level. The, silly sorceress.
The silly sorceress.
You are dumb. It is the exact opposite.
That's not a term I've heard used very often in the Witcher universe. You? You heard that term often when referencing a sorceress in the Witcher universe?
I sure don't.
Because I know I sure haven't. There's nothing silly about sorceresses in the Witcher universe, and describing her as a silly sorceress is dishonest at best. And this is just another reason why I doubt that Tetra's mother was ever a sorceress. Maybe a soothsayer or an untrained source, but she was not a sorceress if she was having kids and getting killed by witchers without any real fuss. That's all I'm saying. They needed to pick a lane with Tetra. If she has to have an actual tragic backstory, then she can't be a mage. Or shouldn't, rather. If she's gonna be a powerful mage, then she doesn't need our fucking pity, and does not want it either. So the writers shouldn't have any reason to try and paint her as a sob story. Tetra should have been portrayed as powerful, not someone to be pitied. That's all just a cherry on top of the mountain of disappointments that this anime turned out to be. Why did they feel the need to make Tetra into a mix of two totally different characters, but not a good representation of either one? I don't know. Also, I'm not saying that mages can never be the victim. Of course, that is absolutely true upon occasion, but no mage anywhere is on the right side of the victim balance bar. Since most criminals are victims themselves, we have to try to figure out the balance between victim and perpetrator. Have they done more to others than what was done to them? And in the case of mages, down to the very last, the answer to that question is almost exclusively, fuck yes! Most mages have caused far more pain and suffering than they themselves have endured. Tetra is no different, since she has a ton of blood on her hands in this anime alone, and because she's lying about her backstory. The only explanation there is that can make sense of all this while keeping the lore intact is if Tetra is lying about her backstory. Think about it. Mages are sterile, all of them in the Netflix Witcher universe.
There is a cost to all creation, the sacrifice that is always made.
All of them are sterile. The only way to get rid of this confliction between the Nightmare of the Wolf and the live-action show is if Tetra's mother was not actually a sorceress, and Tetra was not actually descended from the first human mage. If Tetra is not lying about that, then that means there's a huge confliction between the anime and the live-action show. So I guess it's a matter of picking your own headcanon, I guess. Because in the books, mages could have children. We're going to talk about that again in the next video, I think, so we'll revisit this later. Point is, the writers almost need Tetra to be lying about the stuff she claimed, because otherwise they've got this huge contradiction. But they'll still have that contradiction with Vesemir, Geralt's mother, because, you know, there's no getting rid of that contradiction. Unless, of course, they recant the whole mages can't have babies thing. If they get rid of that, then they could clear all of this up, no problem, and, you know, Tetra wouldn't be a liar, and Geralt's mother could be a sorceress. But because the writers just had to have Yennefer aching for a baby, they had to establish this rule that all mages are sterile. It's just dumb. And a huge missed opportunity, because they could have had a much more poignant discussion on the merits of childbirth. They could have shown mages having children all willy-nilly. They could have shown the negative downsides of that, and shown society what that might look like if people started having babies without a care in the world. Kitsu's Gullibility. This is Kitsu, the spirit of the fox. That's what her name means in Japanese, according to a commenter that I saw. It might or might not be true. I don't know. Perhaps someone can confirm or deny. She is the accomplice of our gigantic disappointment of a villain. An uncomfortable portion of the story depends on the gullibility of Kitsu.
I tried to stop him, but witches, they never hesitate.
In other words, the story needs Kitsu to be completely and utterly dumb to make sense.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
Which is not a great literary choice for the story, in my opinion. Since Kitsu is supposed to be a powerful magic user with plenty of conventional intelligence, according to the anime, it does not make a ton of sense to put Kitsu into a position where she is required to be a complete idiot, just so the story can continue as written. If you need to completely humiliate and embarrass one of your main characters to get the story moving, when that wasn't already part of the plan, then I dare say you're in a bit of trouble with your writing. Not that I'm an expert or anything. I don't know jack shit about jack shit, but I do know that the whole success or failure of a movie depends directly on how many plot holes are in the story. Kitsu's Gullibility is one such plot hole. And if it wasn't there, the movie would be a hell of a lot better off for it, I think. Especially if they had replaced this stupid subplot of Tetra lying to Kitsu with something far more compelling, like the two of them being sisters or something. I don't know. I don't like the whole familial ties angle, but, you know, they could have done something. Like I said, though, if the writers were trying to purposefully embarrass Kitsu, that's one thing. But that's not the case. They wanted us to take Kitsu seriously. They want us to believe that she is a powerful individual that is not to be underestimated. But when push comes to shove, Kitsu is nothing more than a useful idiot in Tetra's schemes. That's not a great position to be in if you want to be taken seriously. And it certainly makes Kitsu look a hell of a lot less competent than she should with all of those powers. Kitsu gains less than nothing by helping Tetra, besides maybe revenge. I mean, Deglan and Riedrich did make her into what she is.
No, I thought we'd killed her. Her mutation was unstable. Too much power. Clearly her death was one of her clever little illusions.
And while she is incredibly powerful, and her powers could be looked on as a gift, I'm sure she still has hard feelings about being experimented on. But Kitsu escaped, and the writers did not include anything about Kitsu being overly abused while she was in the custody of the Witchers. I can't imagine it would have been pleasant, but I also can't see Deglan or Riedrich being over-the-top abusive either. I mean, talking about the Witchers making monsters just pisses me off all over again. The side point that I'm trying to make is that I think if Kitsu was a more pragmatic person, which she should be if she wants to survive, she would realize that there is nothing to be gained by picking a fight with the Witchers. Even if they did make her what she is, there is just no benefit to helping Tetra. Not for Kitsu anyway. She gains nothing. And the larger point of the video is that Kitsu would have had to have been a complete idiot to buy Tetra's lies when she tries to tell Kitsu the Witchers destroyed her base and killed her, child, as Tetra calls her.
Kitsu.
She was gutted to hear how you sacked her den, destroyed her work and murdered the girl, her only child.
I call that kid Kitsu's victim more than anything else.
They're all elves. Girls.
But the writers have it in their heads that Kitsu is some innocent victim, despite all of the horrible, unforgivable shit she has done.
She didn't ask for this.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Like killing something like 30 young girls by experimenting on them. And killing Sugo's entire family for no other reason than to put Sugo into the hands of Tetra, so Tetra can bring him to Kaedwen's court to denounce the Witchers.
And what of your sisters?
The Witcher said to use my sad face on the alderman too, so he'd spare some men to gather the bodies.
Tetra was the one to sick Kitsu on Sugo's family in the first place. Remember, they were in league throughout the entire movie. So fucking stupid. Kitsu was the one controlling the Leshen. Remember? That's why I think Kitsu is one of the worst, most guilty characters in the entire movie.
I am super duper serial.
So it really boggles my mind that the writers have Illyana saying shit like this about Kitsu in the end.
She didn't ask for this.
Neither did anyone else, bitch. No one asked to be born. No one asked for any of the shit that happens to them a lot of the time. That does not excuse Kitsu from her numerous, extremely violent, and heartless crimes. And in her case specifically, Kitsu has done far more to harm others than what has been done to her by Deglan and Riedrich. Kitsu was abused and turned into a superhero, basically.
Clearly her death was one of her clever little illusions.
And that right there is enough for the writers to absolve her from killing some 35 people, by my count. Not even counting all of the people that the monsters at Kaer Morhen killed, who Kitsu was in command of. Just Sugo's family and the elf girls that she's been kidnapping, and you're easily at 35 deaths, directly at Kitsu's feet. She is no longer a victim. Not by a long shot. And the same is true for Tetra. Kitsu never had any integrity as a character, from my point of view. She is kind of indefensible, really. And her being so goddamn dumb that she believes Tetra's obvious lies, that just adds insult to injury. Kitsu could have used her powers for good, but she chose not to. And I don't think she deserved to be let go at the end of the movie.
She didn't ask for this.
That doesn't make any sense.
The real Vesemir would have put her down.
Good!
As harsh as it is to say, Kitsu's hands are simply too covered in blood, and there is no other party capable of dispensing any form of justice other than the Witchers. Kitsu is just too powerful. I mean, mages perhaps, but they don't give a shit, and they would just use Kitsu as a weapon. So it would have been better for pretty much all parties involved if Vesemir had just put Kitsu down.
Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the role?
Yeah, Kitsu, it's me, Tetra Gilchrist. Yeah, sorry to be the one to tell you, but, yeah, the Witchers totally destroyed your base, and, they killed that little girl that you experimented on, and said who was your kid. Yeah, They used an avalanche to destroy your base, and they totally killed that girl, and I totally tried to stop that lone Witcher who isn't supposed to have command over the elements, but somehow does. I was totally powerless to stop him, Kitsu. I'm only a mage after all, and this is the Netflix Witcher universe. But hey, look on the bright side. At least no one else is gonna run into the bodies of those 30 to 40 young girls you kidnapped and murdered, right? You gotta look on the bright side at least, right? At least no one's gonna run into those, right, Kitsu? It's me, Tetra Gilchrist, your best friend ever that would never lie to you. Thanks. I hope you have a great day. Bye. And of course, Kitsu just nods along because she's dumb as a box of rocks. If you tell me that you're able to call this anime good, with all of these problems being brought to the forefront, I don't think we're going to be able to come to any compromise. I'm willing to say that The Nightmare of the Wolf is not the worst movie ever, but it's definitely not good.
Is this the your kind bit?
I'm not happy about this one. Watch this clip. Watch his hand. It happens fast, but you should be able to see it if you pay attention. Did you see it? Vesemir pulls the blade out of its sheath in a last-ditch attempt to wound Kitsu, so he can get a clue on what she is with a sample of her blood. And he sure looks like he's taking it seriously, going by his facial expression. And this is all supposed to be very important to the plot, even though they should have gone in an entirely different direction. Vesemir should really want to make sure he hits his target here. So can someone please explain to me why the hell Vesemir was animated to hit the butt of the blade instead of throwing it?
I have no idea how it happened.
He slapped it.
Why?
Can anyone anywhere come up with a reasonable, valid argument for why this is excusable in the slightest?
I doubt it.
He hit the damn blade. Guys, how can anyone defend that?
I don't know!
The only thing this decision was sure to accomplish was pissing off people like me who notice this kind of stuff.
That just makes you weed.
I am also the type to complain when movies show people shooting 1,000,000 rounds without reloading. I know that's annoying. The people that do notice it, though, are driven absolutely bonkers by it. Why did you do this? Tell me, Beau. It adds nothing to anything. There was no possible positive benefit to doing it this way. In the entire multiverse, there is no alternative universe where this decision led to any kind of positive development in any way. People, me included, are plenty willing to overlook dumb shit on occasion. Accidentally stupid looking special effects and stuff. You know, that happens. That's not what this is, though. This here, Vesemir slapping the butt of the blade, that was a conscious choice being made by someone somewhere on the team. And then the anime made it all the way through checks and rechecks by so many different people, and no one said shit about it, apparently. Or if they did, no one listened. So here we are looking at one of the dumbest, most needless creative decisions ever made, in my point of view. If anyone ever tries to copy what Vesemir does, they're gonna have a bad fucking day when they inevitably slap the wrong side of the blade one time. I bet that'll feel good, getting a blade right through the center of your hand because you were stupid enough to try the dumbest move ever conceived. If anyone ever tried to make a tutorial video about how to do this move, I bet eventually it would have led to a lawsuit when someone loses all feeling and control in their hand from trying this shit. I know. It's just a dumb move in an animated movie. No one is going to take it so seriously that they try to mimic it. I know that's what many of you are thinking. But don't underestimate humanity's capacity for doing dumb shit, especially young people. My whole entire grand point in this rant is that this is just so fucking stupid. I mean, this asshole throws the knife and the damn thing doesn't even stick because the writers need Vesemir to smell the damn thing for the sake of the convoluted story. Were you guys all high when you animated this shit? It's okay if you were. It would explain a lot, that's all.
Well, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Like, are you guys trying to give people ammunition to make shitty, scathing YouTube videos? Because you're making it pretty goddamn relatively easy to roast you guys over these retarded decisions. I know, that word's bad, but it's too much fun to say. Sorry, okay? I'm very sympathetic to the struggle disabled people go through, but that fucking word is too much fun to say. I can't help it.
Try not to be so entirely butthurt, okay?
Why have Vesemir slap the knife?
I don't know!
I don't get it. Someone somewhere must have made the decision to animate Vesemir this way. Whoever is responsible for this, I'm fully expecting you to leave a comment telling me exactly why you did this. And I want to know how this shit made it through the checks.
Don't ask questions.
Because I need to know why Vesemir slapped the knife on the pommel like a total asshole. Like, why didn't he just throw the damn thing like every other person who's ever lived anywhere in the entire multiverse? This section is just such a low-hanging fruit, but he slapped the butt of the blade. Like, I know it seems stupid and trivial to the rest of you guys, but These animes have a lot of eyes on them. I mean, look at its Metacritic score. Look at that shit. You would think someone somewhere would have said something, right? Like, I mean, if you do think that, you'd be dead ass wrong to think so. If there were any critical eyes watching the product before its release, their feedback was completely ignored, because there are multiple instances where all they needed was someone in the room to say, what the fuck is this, guys? Why do it this way? But because this is Netflix we're talking about, the production crew of everything they make is basically one giant echo chamber where only the people at the top ever get to have a say on anything. And those people tend to have their heads so far up their own asses, they long ago have lost the ability to open their eyes and see when they're fucking up. This section sort of falls into a similar vein as the last section, about hitting the butt of the blade. This time, though, we're talking about this impossible magical device right here, what will be forever known as Vesemir's tape measure. I heard Exlatalis say that. Why does this thing exist?
I don't know!
What literary purpose does it serve?
I don't know!
The answer is very clearly nothing whatsoever besides stupid visuals that would have been better off showing something more accurate to the lore, and that makes more sense, and that improves upon the world in which the Witcher inhabits. Vesemir's tape measure does none of these things. Every moment we see Vesemir swinging around on the tape measure is one less opportunity to see something that actually interests the fans and that actually adds to the lore, like clashing armies and monster battles that are accurate to the Witcher bestiary. That means catalog of monsters. All we get by way of exciting visuals is a long, drawn-out sequence of Vesemir getting carried up into the sky by an impossible flying elephant monster with metal jaws, just so he can fall back down in dramatic fashion using his tape measure. Ultimately, he accomplishes nothing except a long, drawn-out entrance into the castle. The whole scene really messes up the pace of the ending, too, because one moment we see Vesemir and Deglan looking cool fighting side by side, and then out of nowhere, completely unexpected and for no good reason, Vesemir gets picked up and carried off into the sky by the aforementioned impossible flying elephant monster with a set of metal jaws, leaving Deglan standing there with his dick in his hand, looking up at Vesemir like, what the hell just happened? The writers use this overlong lull to show Deglan standing there doing nothing while everyone else gets killed. Great. And for whatever reason, Vesemir doesn't move or do anything to escape until he is way up in the air. Like, he just sits there for the longest time, and then finally he starts doing something with his sword. Do I need to keep going? Yes, that's the point of the video, so I guess I do need to keep going. I can't believe I just asked myself a question. I hate when people do that. This device is about the size of a cereal bowl. It holds a length of magical chain that can hold far, far more weight than any other kind of metal that exists in any known sphere of the multiverse. The pieces inside that hold the chain and everything together are made of some sort of futuristic sci-fi material from collapsed stars or something, because this device can withstand some unbelievable amounts of pressure. Vesemir uses this tape measure to hold his own body weight many, many times over, because he is always hooking this thing onto stuff without using knots and letting all of his body weight yank on this tape measure time and time again. And there's never even been a hint of a break. So that thing must be made of some next level type of material. Plot armoridium, plot mantium.
Okay, I see what you did there.
That's the kind of metal they must have used to make this device. Nothing else has that kind of strength, where the mechanical pieces holding this thing together can withstand unlimited multiplier of Vesemir's body weight as he hooks onto the chain and pulls on it with all of his might, while monsters pull on it, I don't care what the tape measure is made out of. As soon as you fully extend that thing and drop your body weight on it, either the links to the chain are going to snap, or the internal pieces holding it together will. So why even include this thing at all?
I don't know!
Like I said before, it serves no purpose to the story at all, and only really gets in the way. So I argue the tape measure would have been better off being cut during the editing. If one of you guys can come up with a good argument for why the tape measure should be here, I mean, I'm interested to read it. This section is about a certain useless asshole by the name of Remus.
3,000 orens. Up front.
Remus, the unwelcome dingleberry that simply refuses to let go of that one long butt hair you just can't quite reach by yourself. He is one of the biggest letdowns of the first season, in my opinion, because he looks so cool and he gets punked so fucking hard.
What a bitch, right?
He is just a gigantic, unadulterated bitch of the highest order, and there's no way around it, unfortunately. Up until the release of the anime, Remus was not a problem, so much as he was a letdown, a disappointment.
So wrong about this guy.
That's how I thought of Remus before the release of the anime, as an annoying little bitch. But now, he is a problem. A big one, too. And that means you need to hear about it, dear viewer.
Oh, that's just great.
When you first see Remus, he actually looks kind of badass and interesting. He looked like he would whoop some ass, since he is a Witcher, but the writers killed him off before he could do anything at all.
So wrong about this guy.
Which is why it's so damn puzzling that they made Remus one of the final survivors of Kaer Morhen.
Why? I don't know!
That's an exalted group. If you've seen the first season of the show, you know it barely takes 30 seconds for the facade of badassery surrounding Remus to disappear. And yet they decided to make him one of the final surviving members of Kaer Morhen?
Why? I don't know!
Like, what?
That's stupid.
By the time the opening title screen is on, it's revealed that Remus was nothing more than an on-screen sacrifice for the Striga.
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
As far as the world was concerned, before the release of The Nightmare of the Wolf, that's all Remus was. Cannon fodder for the screen. A sacrifice. Blood for the blood god.
Blood for the blood god!
With the release of this anime, Remus is now elevated to being one of the final surviving members of Kaer Morhen. As I said, Remus was very much supposed to be a minor character, a witcher from a different school who was very much disconnected from the main cast of the story. That's how it was in the books and games both, and that's how it should have been here as well. That's why I thought they got rid of him so quickly. The production team did not plan to make Remus important ahead of time. That decision was made while the anime was being produced. Well after season 1 was over and done with. I'll bet anything on that. When Remus was killed on screen, he was very much intended to be a sacrifice for the camera, with no story behind him. If anyone ever says different, they're lying. I don't even care.
Try not to be so entirely butthurt, okay?
There's no way that the creators of the live-action show planned on making Remus such an important part of the lore.
I'm not buying it.
That decision was made later. I would have been fine with adding a small subplot that only the hardcore fans would have picked up on if it was unintrusive and didn't feel like such a huge change from the original lore. But Remus being added to the Kaer Morhen 4, now 5, is not that. That change is very intrusive. You can't just change the lore all willy-nilly, man. I mean, legally you can, but like, fuck you for doing it. There's no way Remus could be in that group without the others talking about him at least sometimes. They would have all grown up together. There's no way Geralt, Lambert, and Eskel basically forgot about Remus if he was there from the start. And no one ever even speaks the name Remus. Not even once. Except for in the anime, when all this shit is established.
It'll be Eskel, Lambert, maybe Remus.
Jesus fucking Christ.
These guys have no fucking idea who Remus is, and it should have stayed that way. Geralt's on-screen reaction to Remus's body in Temeria in Season 1 makes sense if he was examining someone he never met before, but who was a fellow Witcher. There was some respect there, but no familiarity. That's what Henry's acting was trying to portray, because the director planned on Remus being a nobody to the story.
That is obvious.
There was no recognition in Geralt's face when he was examining Remus's dead body in Temeria with Triss. No way.
No way, man. No way.
No recognition at all. I'll fight any of you on that point. I don't even care. Geralt did not recognize Remus.
You two clearly weren't acquainted.
The production team decided to shoehorn this change into the anime long after Season 1 was done. They should have left Remus a nobody, or at the very least, they shouldn't have made Remus one of the final surviving members of Kaer Morhen.
Yeah, why? That doesn't make any sense.
That just goes way too far over the line. It's destructive to the lore at this point, rather than improving upon it. All this change does is confuse things and makes fans have to scratch their heads on why this was done at all. And these kinds of changes are what makes people say the Netflix Witcher universe is a universe of its own, made up of more fan fiction than actual Witcher lore. And those people are right to say so, honestly, for all of the reasons given in this video, and many, many more besides. You know, like I said, I would have been fine with the subplot about Remus, making him a bigger character. That would have been cool, actually. I would have really enjoyed that. But making him one of the final surviving members of Kaer Morhen was just 3 steps too far in the wrong direction. Just too much.
Don't ask questions.
Moving on. Where do I begin with Illyana?
I have no idea.
Illyana herself is not a bad character on the whole. Not by any means at all. I don't have a ton of negative things to say about Illyana like I do with some of the other characters. Illyana by herself is actually a pretty compelling character that makes the movie better in a lot of places.
Mages create the Witcher, then presume it's our duty to hold the bucket and mop up their brown mess.
I think I could make a reasonable argument that Mignol would have been a far better choice than Illyana, but that doesn't mean that Illyana is bad. The name Illyana is a hell of a lot better of a name than Mignol, that's for damn sure. I just think the Mignol storyline was a lot more compelling and made more sense basically from every angle. But that's not what we're here to talk about right now. So like I said, there is not nearly as much wrong with Illyana as there is with other characters. My issue comes in when we start talking about the relationship between Illyana and Vesemir. That's where the real problem lies, at least in my eyes. The writers have Vesemir behaving completely unlike his anime personality for the sake of Illyana.
There's drinking, eating, sleeping. Smart con. Wish I'd thought of it. On my word, I will slay this beast. For you, Illyana. No, Illyana. I love you.
That's the problem. Either Vesemir is the swashbuckling Casanova douchebag all the women love and all the guys hate, or he is not.
The swashbuckling Witcher for hire, the slayer Vesemir.
The writers can't have both. I mean, they can, but that sucks and makes for a character that no one is going to be able to identify or sympathize with. I also don't enjoy how Vesemir and Illyana met as children. I don't like how there is no clear start to their relationship. They already know and like each other when we meet them. So we are just expected to accept that these two have chemistry. And I really do not think they do. But that's just me, really. And we're supposed to accept that these two are just innocent children in the anime, despite them both looking, sounding, and acting like adults. And the production team makes the cardinal sin of using adult voices for child characters.
Just be happy you have a roof over your head and your belly's not empty.
Barely a roof, barely not empty.
I know kids are hard to work with, which is why I maintain you should just avoid showing the childhood at all. But if you're gonna have kids on screen, at least have a kid do the voice. Another layer to this is Illyana's age.
I'm nearly 70.
Now, don't mistake me. My argument is not that Illyana is too old to be loved or anything like that. My argument is more based on how Vesemir behaves in relation to Illyana, considering the changes they made to his personality.
The swashbuckling Witcher for hire, the slayer Vesemir.
Little fresh, but also lovely.
So it's like, Illyana isn't the problem herself, it's Vesemir and his reactions to her. That's what I think would be a very big problem if these people were real. Vesemir's super hot looks and his 60-year-long hot girl summer, that would corrupt him in a big way and without any doubt.
Corrupted.
There's no way Vesemir would be able to jump right into Illyana's arms without reservation. And why would the writers want to do that anyway?
I have no idea.
I can't think of a more boring and vanilla way to go. It's much more compelling to show Vesemir struggling to reconcile the love he had for her long ago with his near immortal youth, not being able to jump right back in love with her like she is able to with him because he is still young and attractive, and he still has the taste of a young man. The writers missed out on that opportunity completely by having Vesemir jump into Illyana's arms like they have been together the whole time.
You've had such a full...
You wish to kill my already dead husband and burn the orphanage to the ground.
Not the precise words I'd use.
Plus, it's just plain unrealistic to have him do that, like I said before. Equally as important as all that is how Illyana would probably not want to jump right into his arms either.
Please, I'm nearly 70.
I think a strong, intelligent politician like Illyana would resent the notion that she would swoon as soon as Vesemir shows up.
Yeah, why? That doesn't make any sense.
Maybe she harbors feelings towards him, but I doubt that she would act on them for fear of rejection, if nothing else. And because she's lived a long life of politics and knows how dangerous it is to reveal your cards so easily. She would be expecting Vesemir to spurn her due to his near immortality. And as vain and unfortunate as it is, in this situation, I doubt the sentimental feelings Vesemir has towards Illyana would be enough to overcome the 60-year-long hot girl summer he has been on.
These pleasures do not pay for themselves.
Especially while he is still in his prime. If Vesemir was already physically aging at that point, sure, then maybe Illyana and Vesemir could have had a chance. But the way they portrayed Vesemir here, never in a million years.
Not in a million years.
He is simply too arrogant and too cocky and too attractive to be that chivalrous.
I will slay this beast for you, Illyana.
You're full of shit.
I'm sure they would still be close. I'll bet you they'd be great friends, actually. But I call bullshit on them trying to have a weird relationship where they kiss and stuff but don't go any further than that because they know it's fucking weird. And likely because Illyana would not actually be able to do it, considering the times they lived in and her age.
I'm nearly 70.
Menopause is still very much a thing, and lube wasn't exactly easy to get back then, unless you wanted to use duck fat or something. That's not going to be great for your pH balance, though, I'm sure. And you'd probably end up with a UTI doing something like that.
Maybe you ought to mind your own business, cowboy.
It's just plain boring to have Vesemir and Illyana get along like they're both teenage sweethearts that never left each other.
I was just weighing whether you'd done my dashing looks justice.
And it's unrealistic, it's boring, and it's completely unbelievable. And, to put salt in the wound, it's also a huge wasted opportunity.
What a waste.
Illyana is a grandmother, for Christ's sake.
One just made me a grandmother. I begged her not to.
And the writers just gloss over all of that nuance. Also, the writers can show these two having a bunch of rom-com moments together.
Illyana.
These two are both supposed to be 70. They're the same age.
I'm nearly 70.
So am I.
The movie uses this as their excuse to have them making out. They're the same age after all, right? But the writers really missed out on being able to tell a compelling story here that could teach a valuable lesson about age and beauty to the modern world. And that conversation could be more and more relevant as technology gets better and better and lifespans increase.
Maybe so, but who cares?
The struggle of age and beauty will be something shared by almost all people in some way or another. That's why I think the story would have been better and much, much more realistic and impactful if the writers had shown Vesemir as not knowing how to react to Illyana when he sees her in her old age.
Illyana.
He would be happy to see her, of course, and also confused, with probably a tinge of anger and jealousy that Illyana rejected a life with Vesemir, only to go find that with someone else.
And if I could take care of you?
So trade my debt to a master I hate with a debt to one that I love.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Like, she turns him down when Vesemir offers to take care of her on the grounds that she would be subservient to him if she did that, but that just don't wash. There probably would have been a huge surge of emotion that would have resulted in Vesemir trying to run away to escape the guilt when he met Illyana for the first time. Because that's how most people would behave in his shoes, I think. Not that it's right, in fact it's quite wrong, but that's probably how most people would react. You can love a person's personality to the moon and back, but if the sexual attraction is completely gone, and you complicate it with all of the other details, the relationship can only ever be a friendship or one-sided relationship at best.
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
I think it would be much more likely that this arrogant, vain version of Vesemir would do whatever he could to get away from Illyana, to escape the guilt he would feel just from looking at her.
This is unexpected, yes.
Because she got old and he didn't.
I knew witchers age differently, but well, look at you.
Maybe he wouldn't run away from her, but he would be acting super weird and distant. There's no way would the swashbuckling witcher become the model of chivalry as soon as he meets his gilf fling.
Bullshit! No fucking way!
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I've found that often when we are faced with extreme guilt, we try to either escape the source of it, or we try to turn that guilt into a different emotion. More often than not, in the case of males, that emotion is anger. So I think it's really stretching the realm of possibility to suppose that this Casanova Vesemir, which means he fucks a lot of chicks, would drop everything to hook up with his 70-year-old childhood friend, who is now a sweet single grandmother.
We need more before the next tale.
And I say hook up, but, you know, they wouldn't be.
I'm nearly 70.
It would be completely reasonable that they remain friends after Vesemir got over the guilt that he would likely feel, and if Vesemir didn't straight up murder Illyana with negligence.
Yeah. Wait, what?
We'll get into that soon. But I really, really do not think that this Vesemir, who spent the last 60 whole years as the best looking person on the continent, and also the most dangerous person alive, probably, I doubt he'd be able to maintain his purity through all of those years of wild debauchery.
No fucking way!
You guys know what 10 years of being a movie star does to people's minds, right? Imagine what 60 years of that would do if you never aged during that whole time and kept all of your looks.
As I said, corrupted.
You would be so corrupted by then. Anyone would be. That's why I firmly believe this version of Vesemir is so much better. He's not as good looking, and he wouldn't have had so much female attention this whole time. He'll have had a few flings, probably, and maybe one real love, along with the regular amount of hookers he'd be spending his time with, but he wouldn't be drowning in female attention, like the anime version of Vesemir would. So it would be much more likely to see this version of Vesemir, a younger version of the Witcher 3 Vesemir, clinging to an old love like we see in the anime, but still probably not even then. Vesemir is a fucking Chad. What do you want me to say? I'm not saying that it's impossible for douche Vesemir and Illyana to get back together. I'm just saying that it's probably super unlikely considering the type of person anime Vesemir is, and the kind of circumstances he would be living with as a result of the changes forced upon him by the writers of the anime, such as being a Greek god of perfection in every measurable way, down to a big old swinging dick, because only guys with big dicks casually walk around naked.
See, I'm a monster hunter, Phil. Not an elf wrangler, not even the murderous ones, but good luck.
Yes, I know this from experience. My penis is famously microscopic.
So small.
My point is, being the peak of physical perfection tends to go to one's head, and 60 whole years of living like that, as evidenced by the anime itself, would and did go to Vesemir's head.
Is this the your kind bit?
He is every bit the overconfident jerk I'm describing. It's just that the writers snapped their fingers and forced Vesemir to behave like the model boyfriend and husband to Illyana.
No, Illyana, I love you.
I think reality would have led to a much different result between them. It's more likely that Vesemir hooks up with Illyana's daughters than Illyana herself.
Girls, horrors, all three of them.
And having Vesemir hook up with Illyana's daughters would have made for a much more entertaining story, with many more possible life lessons held within. I could be totally wrong about everything I just said. I fully accept that, but there's a chance I'm right as well. And I think you know that, dear viewer. So let me know what you think. Leave it in a comment below. Subscribe, follow me on Twitter, all that shit. Moving on. We have to talk about Illyana's death. It's simply too fucked up not to. So I also have problems with how Illyana is injured in the first place, right? But that isn't so much the focus of what I'm trying to talk about here. The fact is, Illyana is injured mortally by Vesemir. That's what matters right now. The real problem I want to bloviate about is what Vesemir does after Illyana is wounded. She has a sword wound right through the gut, right? And the sword was pulled out. That's no fucking joke of a wound, dude. That's like, you've got minutes at best. Swords are big-ass hunks of metal that make huge-ass holes when they are shoved all the way through the torso, like comparable to a large caliber round. It's not easy to shove a blade all the way through someone's chest, but if you manage to pull it off, the damage is incalculable and damn near deadly 100% of the time, usually within seconds because of the sheer blood loss. Swords make cavern-size holes in people. I'm not a doctor or anything, and I don't know shit about nothing, as the kids say, but I know that once you pull the object out, and blood starts flowing, the clock is ticking fucking fast, which is why I've heard doctors say to leave the knife, or sword in this case, stuck in the wound until you get to the hospital. I don't know if that's true. For fuck's sake, don't listen to me. If you get stabbed, I have no fucking idea what you should do. I'm just saying, it makes some logical sense that if you yank the object out, blood is gonna start to flow, and therefore, you die faster. Maybe there are exceptions to the rule. I don't know. All I'm saying is that if that sword was pulled out of Illyana's chest, she has minutes to live from the moment it's out. The things Vesemir chooses to do at this point makes no goddamn sense to me, and is the reason why I'm here bitching and complaining right now. I just can't rationalize it in my mind.
That doesn't make any sense.
I need some help with it. So here it goes. Like, Vesemir is supposed to care about Illyana a lot, right? He is supposed to want to protect her and preserve her life, right? Vesemir is basically Illyana's simp. So you're damn right he is supposed to care.
No, you don't. I do. I know you don't.
And in the world of the Witchers, there are multiple unconventional options when it comes to medicine, magic in particular.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And also, don't forget about the stupid slogan the Netflix writers keep shoving down our throats.
I told you. A Witcher never hesitates. Oh, I know.
Remember? No hesitation? So, shouldn't Vesemir have been spending Illyana's final precious moments frantically trying to save her, rather than very fucking slowly walking her down to a pond that's far as fuck away, just so you can set her down and light an entire pond on fire for the last 10 seconds of her life for no good reason at all? Awesome, dude. If I was Illyana, I would be talking shit at the very end. Like, oh, so you can light a lake on fire with your hands, but you can't try to bandage me up and find me a healer? Fuck you, guy. I'd be talking all kinds of shit right up until the end. Vesemir can do all of this flashy fire magic that Tetra can't or won't even do, but somehow Vesemir can't try to do some basic first aid, or at least try to find a potion that could heal her or something. Anything would have been better than this whole goddamn pond charade.
Yeah, why?
Because she dies right after he burns the lake, so she can't even appreciate it. But what does it matter if she appreciated the gesture?
Well, it doesn't.
She might have lived if Vesemir chose to do something. Her appreciation of that light show means fuck all, don't you think? Vesemir could have used what precious-ass time there was left for her to at least try and save her from the mortal wound he inflicted upon her, but he didn't, and that's what really matters at the end of the day. Vesemir chose to do nothing. The writers made sure Vesemir was irredeemably shitty, and this nonsense seals the deal in that regard. Illyana was young enough for Vesemir to want to make out with her and stuff, so she must have had the potential to live for at least another 10 years or so. She couldn't have been on her deathbed throughout the movie. Illyana had time left.
What's time, anyway?
And Vesemir chose not to try and save her. Or rather, the writers chose to have Vesemir literally kill Illyana. Like, that's like a fact.
What? Holy shit.
Vesemir murdered Illyana in more ways than one. He delivered the killing blow, and he refused to lend aid when he was potentially able to. That would be two separate charges in a court of law if the world had any justice in it, which of course it does not. You just can't mortally wound someone and then not lift a finger to try and save her life. Don't you guys think Vesemir owed it to Illyana to try and fucking save her?
Can't change the spots on a shit leopard.
Even if he couldn't, doesn't he at least owe it to her to at least try? I mean, how is Vesemir able to live with himself knowing he didn't try to do anything to help her?
I don't know!
Because bringing her to the pond, sure as shit, didn't help anyone but him.
Greedy fucking prick.
And it sure as hell doesn't count as him doing something. You know what? Given Vesemir's track record in the anime, I'll bet that asshole threw her body in the pond after she died.
God, he sucks.
So he didn't have to bury her body or set up a pyre. I wouldn't put it past him, considering all the fucked up shit he does throughout the anime. This version of Vesemir is worse than any Geralt in any Witcher 3 playthrough. Like, for real, guys, this guy is a fucking asshole.
That is obvious.
I've got a question for anyone able to answer it. So to all of you that consider yourself in the feminine role of the relationship dynamic, answer me this. Would you rather have your tough, strong, masculine partner try to frantically and futilely try to save your life during your last moments, just on the off chance some miracle happens and he pulls it off? Or would you rather he cart you off to a fucking pond so you can watch him exterminate all life within that pond for your benefit while you sit there and fucking die? I would love to know what you guys think. Would you rather watch him light a bunch of fish on fire while you die? Or would you rather watch him frantically try to patch you up so you at least have some fighting chance to survive?
I get it, yes.
Can someone please tell me this is not all in my head? Am I making sense here? It seems to me the entire ending of the anime was a disaster at every goddamn point, especially when Illyana dies, but also at so many other points as we've been discussing for the last goddamn few hours or so. But what the hell do I know? At least there was an LGBTQ character, right?
What are you prattling about?
That's what really matters, right? There's so many mindless, useful idiots out there clapping and praising Netflix for subpar garbage like The Nightmare of the Wolf. So many people defending the indefensible because they liked this or that specific part of the movie, or because they support the writers politically. So do I, guys. I really, really do. But that doesn't mean we need to have new politics added to every adaptation. And as long as you guys believe there needs to be, writers like Beau and Lauren are going to be hired to do projects like The Witcher.
That's a bad thing, though, right?
When we all know it would have been better off in the hands of someone who actually gives a shit about the source material.
And for years, I had a lot of trouble finding myself in fantasy. And do I know that not everyone's happy with it? Yeah. But I still feel really strongly that it's the right decision for the story that we're telling. I am writing an adaptation. It's what I was hired to do. An adaptation, an adaptation, an adaptation.
Someone who is not trying to push a message. Activism is not something that should be a credible thing to put on your resume as a writer. It's a credible thing to do all day long, baby. We need activists, just not in the writer's room. We need activists writing the stories, so when it comes time for adaptations, the politics are already there. Am I making sense? We need activists writing the books, creating the new worlds, making the shit from scratch, so that your ideas can stand on their own two legs, rather than co-opting other stories to try to push your message along. Even if your message is absolutely correct and in the right, that doesn't mean that you should be trying to attach them to stories that were already done. I don't think anyone should be getting in any kind of trouble for this. I think anyone should be able to do whatever they want with art without fear of any serious repercussion. But the caveat is that people like me get to bitch and complain as much as they want whenever you try to do it.
Oh, that's just great.
So, again, I ask, am I making sense here? Let me know in the comments after you've liked the video, subscribed to the channel, made a small but very meaningful donation to my Patreon, and also follow me on Twitter, please. I need validation and a reason to post. In the beginning-ish of the movie, during one of the numerous, totally pointless and counterproductive flashback sequences, Illyana says the next clip to Vesemir in response to him offering to give her a life of luxury as his wife, I assume.
So trade my debt to a master I hate with a debt to one that I love.
On the surface, I guess that statement makes sense. It's not gibberish. If we didn't already know what Illyana was going to do in her future, then sure. If Illyana was going to grow up as a bow-wielding badass, then that statement actually makes a lot of sense. If she planned on striking it out on her own and doing her own thing without anyone at all holding her back, then sure, fair enough. Under those circumstances, then yeah, this retort would make sense.
So trade my debt to a master I hate with a debt to one that I love.
It would make perfect sense coming from Tetra or a different sorceress. But that's not what Illyana is, at all. And striking out on her own was never part of the plan for Illyana. And it's not what she ended up doing either. Illyana planned right from the start to find a husband and start a family.
My handsome husband and I would picnic and drink wine by the water.
She was always transparent about that being her goal, too. You go, girl. So on those grounds alone, Illyana had plenty of good reason to turn Vesemir down. So what the hell was she talking about in the clip that I showed you earlier? In her retort, she said some shit about trading a master she hates for a master she loves. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. She still should have shot Vesemir down, don't get me wrong. Just not with those words.
With a debt to one that I love.
Because that shit just does not add up.
Yeah, why? That doesn't make any sense.
She owed Vesemir the truth, at the very least. The truth being that he would soon be sterile if he goes through with becoming a Witcher, and Illyana wants children. That's what Illyana should have told Vesemir, not this bullshit about a master she hates for a master she loves. That just doesn't make any sense. That does not apply to her. Illyana talked about having a husband and children right from the moment we saw her on screen, and it was not in a negative way either.
My handsome husband and I would picnic and drink wine by the water.
She was not dreading it or afraid of the idea at all. And sure as shit, Illyana grew up to marry a noble in Kaedwen.
It was their son who was truly fond of me, despite my station.
And according to their ridiculous ticking time bomb of a law, Illyana inherited her husband's political position as well.
Kaedwen's laws grant a widow her husband's seat at court.
That's stupid.
We'll talk about that in a second, because holy shit, that's one hell of a dumb concept. But back to the point at hand. How can Illyana claim that her husband was anything other than a master she loved?
He's someone you miss very much when they depart.
She turned Vesemir down on the grounds that she would lose her freedom if she accepted.
And if I could take care of you? All your wine, anything and everything.
So trade my debt to a master I hate with a debt to one that I love.
You are dumb. It is the exact opposite.
But I argue that Illyana would probably have found even more freedom if she had stayed with Vesemir, since witchering is so damn lucrative, according to the anime.
You're a witcher. You're rich.
The coin that witcher made last night, you should have saw it.
Illyana would have wanted for nothing.
We'll lack for nothing.
And she would have had full control of the home and finances without having to worry about Vesemir getting in the way, because he would be gone most of the time. And a smart, strong-willed person like Illyana would probably favor those conditions. Or maybe not.
Imagine it however you like.
Basically, if Illyana had stayed with Vesemir, she could have had full financial support from him without even having to do anything for him except for when he returns home every so often. She could have maintained a political career while Vesemir did his thing, or she could have ran the orphanage that she ended up running anyway.
Turned it into an orphanage.
Or any number of things that she wouldn't have been able to do with a traditional husband who's around all the time that would have wanted Illyana to behave in a traditional way. I'm just saying, these two could have had a good thing together. So having Illyana repeat a militant feminist talking point like that one,
so trade my debt to a master I hate with a debt to one that I love,
is a bit of a shock, to be honest. It's not like Illyana would have to deal with a domineering partner who sits around doing nothing all day while he beats her for minor mistakes. That's not at all what she would have had to deal with if she had stayed with Vesemir.
It's perfect, Illyana. Flawless.
Far from it. The man is a witcher. Illyana could have done whatever the hell she wanted while he was taking on contracts, like I just said. So Vesemir does have at least somewhat of a right to be a bit angry with Illyana for turning him down.
So trade my debt to a master I hate with a debt to one that I love.
Not because she turned him down, but because she lied about it. She gave him that bullshit line and went and found a different master that she loved, who was just not Vesemir.
It was their son who was truly fond of me, despite my station.
So yeah, I think Vesemir has a reason to be a bit angry, or at least a bit hurt. But of course, the movie glosses right over that, and Vesemir just jumps right back into Illyana's arms.
You've always had too much fire. And beauty. No, Illyana, I love you.
With the husband that she ended up with, Illyana was pigeonholed as a mother and homemaker, because her husband was the one with the career in politics. And Illyana knew that's what she was good at, so she couldn't even try to do that herself without stepping on her husband's toes, which is why she didn't become a politician until after her husband died.
Kaedwen's laws grant a widow her husband's seat at court.
That's stupid.
So to my way of thinking, there are a lot of benefits to being with Vesemir from Illyana's perspective, over being with a traditional noble, since apparently witchering makes a ton of money now, for whatever stupid reason.
Coin's your real lover. More of her to pluck out there, isn't there?
So where does this bullshit argument on Illyana's part come from?
Good question.
What do you mean, trade a master you hate for a master you love? What does that mean? Being with Vesemir does not make him your master, Illyana. He would have done the same for you as your future husband, except with less restrictions. And you didn't refer to your husband as a master you love.
He's someone you miss very much when they depart.
So what the hell are you talking about, Illyana? Did these rules only apply towards Vesemir for some reason? Did Illyana say that shit to Vesemir just to get him to back off or something?
I don't know, man.
That doesn't make any sense because they ended up getting together later on regardless, long after Illyana's prime, when Vesemir would have been actually interested. But, you know, whatever, right?
We need more before the next tale.
And Illyana is the one to chase Vesemir, more so than the other way around. Vesemir is a bit oblivious to her advances when they're young, so it's bullshit to say that Illyana was trying to give Vesemir the runaround, or trying to feed him a line of bullshit to get him to go away. That's not at all what was happening.
No way, man, no way.
Illyana wanted Vesemir. That's what the writers were trying to set up, so it makes no sense at all to have her say this line.
So trade my debt to a master I hate with a debt to one that I love.
If anything, she should have referenced Vesemir's future infertility, or the fact that he might not even make it through the trials, even though he has way too much plot armor for that to even be a reasonable risk. But Illyana didn't know that, so that's a real reason for her to turn him down. Both Vesemir being sterile and the risk of him being killed in the trials are two excellent concrete reasons for Illyana to turn him down. Those would be much more reasonable excuses for telling Vesemir, Illyana's very obvious deep crush, to go fuck himself. From my perspective, there seems to be a serious lack of scope when it comes to the array of monsters appearing in the Netflix Witcher universe. Of course, it's still a bit early-ish. There's still a long way to go before the flagship show is over and done with, so they have time to correct what I'm talking about. But talk about it we will, regardless of what they do. And in the case of the anime, this problem is particularly exacerbated. I think Netflix has a humongous boner for Leshens for whatever reason. I agree that Leshens are really cool as a monster concept, easily in the top 5 from the monsters in The Witcher 3. But Leshens never appear in the books. They are only ever in the games. And not very often either. They're one of the coolest looking monsters in Witcher 3, but they are by no means the most common. They're actually supposed to be incredibly rare. So it's actually kind of ironic to see Netflix using Leshens at all. They've done everything they can to spurn and shy away from the games and try to separate themselves from the game's legacy.
Why? I don't know!
But here they are taking inspiration from the games and using the shit out of the ideas.
Who cares?
But the Netflix universe thoroughly overuses Leshens. There have been, I think, 3 or 4 Leshens so far. Eskel, the Leshen.
Jesus fucking Christ.
The Leshen that infected Eskel, and the Leshen in the anime. That's 3 of like the 10-ish total monster encounters so far, all being the same monster. That kind of sucks, doesn't it? Especially when there are so many options to choose from when it comes to monsters. And also, spelling it Leshy might be accurate, but it sounds dumb, and it emasculates the monster, in my humble opinion.
I didn't ask you, and I don't care.
The word Leshen stuck with me because it sounds like something scary. Calling it a Leshy, for whatever reason, makes it sound a lot less threatening, and that's the last thing we needed. That only happens in the 2nd season of the show, though, not the anime. In the anime, they call it a Leshen.
Crossed a Leshen on my way here.
And the anime has a serious problem with monster variety beyond Leshen as well. There are only like 5 total types of monsters in the anime, and not a single one of them are even remotely close to what the bestiary described for any one particular monster. All we get in the anime is conglomerations of different monsters, and those conglomerations get named after this or that monster. Whether or not the name actually fits the monster is totally irrelevant. Like griffins, they are basically flying elephants in the anime. But, you know, fuck it, right? It doesn't matter if there is any consistency with monster descriptions. The fans are all too dumb to notice, or have drank so much of the Kool-Aid that they are incapable of seeing how this is a problem.
People are like children. They are children.
You could be forgiven for thinking the anime would try to introduce more monsters that are accurate to their descriptions because it's relatively easy for them to animate. Most people would think that that's what they would do, but you would be completely wrong for thinking so. Even though the anime does not have limitations with makeup and CGI, they still decided to completely wing it with monster design.
Welcome to hell.
It would have been so much easier to introduce monsters first through the anime, because it's animations, they can do anything they want without limits, and they don't have to worry about increasingly expensive costumes and shit. So they could have established an entire bestiary with the anime, but they chose not to.
Why? I don't know!
They could have done so many monsters so easily with that animation style, and they could have made the monsters incredibly accurate to their descriptions without copying CDPR directly, and still keeping things fresh. we could have had the same scientific feeling consistency The Witcher 3 has, where you can say things like, drowners are blue-skinned pack hunters, and ghouls are hunched humanoids with strangely human-looking faces who also hunt in packs. You could say something like that and it would make sense, because the lines between the species are very clear. You would be able to clearly tell them both apart by looking at them. Drowners are drowners and ghouls are ghouls. In the anime, all humanoid monsters are now drowner ghouls, a conglomeration of the two. There is no variety, and you cannot say anything definitive about any monster species because the lines are so damn blurred. All we have now are black-skinned, red-eyed zombies, mosquito wolves, basilisk griffin hybrids with fucked-up legs, and a giant flying elephant with metal jaws. Who the hell put the metal jaws on the griffin?
I don't know!
Plus, there was wraiths and the stupid snake hybrid thing that really should have been just a chort or a fiend or some other land-based monster that actually has a place within the lore. And that's it for monsters in the anime. All of the various species and subspecies are gone. No more ghouls, owl-ghouls, water hags, foglets, neckers, or drowners. All we get now are red-eyed zombies, as a conglomerate of them all.
Thanks, I hate it.
The basilisk looks more like a winged beetle with chicken legs, and the griffins look like elephants with wings. These huge-ass griffins and the weird basilisk wannabe things both have the completely impossible, totally fake wing types where it's just two wings sticking out of the back. On top of the griffins being way too big to fly, even if they did have the right type of wings. They're doubly screwed. Most of the monsters in the Witcher universe are shown to use their wings as their hands. Because, like, that's the only way flying works with animals. Wings do not grow out of the spine as a separate appendage. Wings are basically arms with skin in between to catch the air. I know some monsters in The Witcher 3 have the stupid kind of wings, but most of them don't. That's really not important right now. The point I'm trying to make here is that the griffins are just needlessly big and make no sense.
That's the point.
There was no need to change griffins like this, other than for shock value. To try to get people to point and say, "Wow, look how big that is. Can you imagine if that was real?" And they succeeded because that's exactly what I'm saying right now. It's just that I can't picture this thing anywhere but stuck firmly on the ground because they're way too damn big and have the wrong kind of wings. They're not going nowhere. And then for the basilisks, they have these fucking weird-ass knee joints that make no sense whatsoever. And it would be plain old cruelty to ever purposefully change an animal's appendages to be completely useless like this. So that's one more strike against Kitsu's reputation. Cruelty to animals on top of everything else.
What a bitch, right?
So I'm not so much in awe of their size and design as I am in awe of the writer's disregard for any sense of realism. At least try to make the monsters believable. Now, the Witcher 3 griffins actually made sense, and I'll bet you there was once animals on Earth comparable to a griffin in size, like the pterodactyl or direhawk or whatever its name is. But nowhere in evolutionary history are you going to find a creature that is not only huge, but has 4 limbs and a set of wings on their back. That's purely an invention of fantasy writers. All flying creatures do so with their hands, essentially. Only their fingers are super long, and they have webbing or feathers or whatever in between. You guys get my point, right?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
They got flying creatures really, really wrong.
That is obvious.
And the monster variety is fucking terrible in the anime. Consistency for each species was never even on the radar of anyone involved with making the anime. The weird mosquito dog things are basically a knockoff version of the Hounds of the Wild Hunt. And the Drowner ghouls are just a combination of all necrophages, while not representing any one of them even remotely recognizably. I think that's about all I have for criticisms of monsters related to the anime, but I'm sure I'll think of like 5 more points as soon as the video is posted and I rewatch it. All bullshit aside though, the last thing we needed was for all of the awesome old monsters to be replaced by a handful of conglomerations that can barely be called the Witcherverse monsters because of how little sense they make. The bestiary at times in the Witcher games can be a bit fantastical. I fully admit that. But all of the monsters feel like they are at least somewhat scientifically understandable and could possibly, under the right circumstances, come from a natural world somewhere out in the multiverse. Even even if they are totally beyond the scope of what is possible in the real world. The Witcher bestiary feels like they could exist. That's what makes them believable, and that's what matters. I wish more than anything that I could say the same, or at least something similar, about the Netflix Witcher universe. But the sad truth is, I cannot, or at least I am far too biased to say it. The short answer for all of those who'd like to skim through is that I do not like Riedrich at all. He is yet another tokenized black character that is worse than pointless, as he serves as the writer's excuse to take the moral high ground, despite them not trying to create a compelling character in Riedrich. I really hope the best of Riedrich is on the cutting room floor, because what is here is bare-ass minimum nonsense on the best of days.
God, he sucks.
I'm sorry to say. And what's worse, Riedrich is actively a detriment to the reputation and success of the Witcher Order.
Imagine an army of beasts designed to wipe out the elves and the old races, to secure land and food.
You're full of shit.
Without having the decency to at least be a likable person, or having some other redeemable positive quality. The writers completely destroy any hope Riedrich had of being a decent character because the writers were desperate to have the Witchers and their mages creating monsters. That alone makes Riedrich and Deglan both completely indefensible and just plain shitty characters. Because them creating monsters, like I said in the section about Deglan, permanently condemns them both as being completely malicious idiots with no ability to tell when they are making a terrible, self-destructive mistake.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
If anyone was going to create monsters on behalf of the Witchers, the only way it could ever make any sense is if it was being done by a traitor. As the result will always be complete annihilation for the Witchers if it ever gets out that Witchers created monsters.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's the one thing they're not supposed to do. That's like the one thing that they could do to destroy the Order forever and completely. And any character that tried to do that in good faith, without trying to destroy the Witcher Order as a result, is a complete and total idiot with no hope at all. Because it is obvious that Witchers creating monsters is basically self-deletion. Riedrich and Deglan do not strike me as complete idiots, but they still are because of the choices forced upon them by the writers.
God damn you!
Riedrich should have been a very flawed supporting character. Perhaps maybe a magical genius who is a master researcher and scientist, but has a near-crippling addiction to the Witcher world's version of opiates.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Perhaps Riedrich could have been on the cusp of making a huge breakthrough in the mutagens, and he only had enough time to test some of it out on Geralt before the pogrom, thus explaining Geralt's baldness at the end. That would have allowed us to see more of what was done to Geralt, and get some background on how the Trial of the Grasses might have worked. And we could have had a very compelling, but flawed character in Riedrich, a Zaracanian genius who was cast out of the Order and society for his addiction or something, instead of the indefensible racist asshole who is hell-bent on destroying the Witchers with his work of creating monsters.
Imagine an army of beasts designed to wipe out the elves and the old races, to secure land and food.
Even though he is portrayed as not having any malicious intentions.
Today, my mages and I guard the secrets to such mutagenic alchemy, preventing further abuse.
All characters need to have some kind of balance, and Riedrich really doesn't have any, from my point of view. He could have, very easily, if the writers had just dropped the bullshit subversion plot of Witchers creating monsters. The mages of Kaer Morhen were supposed to be exiles of society and the Brotherhood of Sorcerers. The renegade mages at Kaer Morhen only cared about making Witchers more powerful and deadly, so they could have a small army of deadly fighters protecting them. And Riedrich makes no mention of this at all. And by the way he talks, specifically in this clip right here,
an army of beasts designed to wipe out the elves and the old races, to secure land and food. food.
Riedrich is shown to be far too concerned for the well-being of a society that hates him and everything he has ever done. It makes no sense for Riedrich to give a shit about securing land and food for people, and that excuse does not justify him creating an army of monsters. I know the writers really wanted to have the twist of witchers creating monsters. I get it, but I will go to my grave bitching and screaming about how much of a mistake that really was.
I am super duper cereal.
Riedrich should have been a huge focus of the anime. Instead of Vesemir's childhood, we should have seen a whole bunch of stuff involving Riedrich and the other mages at Kaer Morhen, and a cabal of other mages conspiring to take the renegades and their army of witchers down, to increase their own power over society. Cutting all of that out in favor of having a dumb, barely coherent, subversive plot of witchers creating monsters is a grossly offensive mistake in my opinion.
You know, that's just like, your opinion, man.
The roadmap for the fall of Kaer Morhen was right fucking there. All they had to do was animate it and tie everything together. We could have had a compelling character of color with a multifaceted story in Riedrich, but all we got was a few moments of him being an indefensibly racist asshole for no good reason.
Wipe out the elves and the old races.
If he was really likable, but also an awful terrible person who commits mass genocide, that might be something interesting, but he isn't. He is openly bigoted, and he supports genocide.
Wipe out the elves and the old races.
This dude should be more worried about his research, and less worried about wiping out the elves for no actual reason, since the elves are basically decimated and a shadow of their former strength at the time of the anime. So I don't quite get why he is so worried about creating an army of monsters to wipe out the elves. And what land, exactly, is he talking about?
To secure land and food.
Since the elves had already lost most of their territory by this point in the timeline, what land are they going to take from the elves and the old races? It just doesn't make any sense. And what food? I assume he means land to then grow the food on, but refer to what I just said. What land? The humans control all of the good land already. And more importantly, why would renegade mages at Kaer Morhen, like Riedrich, give two dusty shits about the acquisition of land and food for society? They wouldn't.
But they would not.
They wouldn't give a shit. That's my point. Riedrich would not care. Upstanding mages don't give a shit about the common people on the best of days. And the Netflix writers here want us to believe that Riedrich, a renegade mage, is supposed to care about the society that exiled him? Bullshit. Riedrich wouldn't have given two shits about the people, and he wouldn't even have bothered to pretend like he cared, because he is not only a shitty person for the viciously stupid and needlessly bigoted outlook on life that he has, but also because he is one of the key architects of the dumbest plan ever thought of by any witcher ever to live. His only real line is one of the most needlessly racist sentences ever thought of.
Wipe out the elves and the old races.
And the rest of his lines are basically small talk. He does not really say or do anything meaningful in the whole damn anime. At the end, Riedrich is propped up as being the person of interest.
Tetra will want our heads most.
And for some stupid reason, Deglan tells Riedrich and the other mages at Kaer Morhen to go hide themselves away for the final battle.
Seal yourselves in your labs.
Why would you do that?
When all of the mages at Kaer Morhen should have been on the walls using their own magic to defend the keep. There is no real excuse for Deglan and Riedrich both to ignore such powerful assets like a group of renegade mages who were backed into a corner and have no qualms about using forbidden magic to defend themselves. That's too big of an asset to ignore.
Seal yourselves in your labs.
That's stupid.
So I guess the point of this section, even though I got quite sidetracked, is that my biggest criticism of Riedrich is that he should have had a much greater role within the story. I would have loved to have seen something like Frankenstein from Penny Dreadful, you know, a troubled but brilliant scientist who makes all kinds of advancements but ends up being killed because of outstanding circumstances outside of his control. I love the way Riedrich looks. The animation is always on point, artistically speaking. It's the writing, though. It's the motivations and the dialogue that dooms this character, Riedrich specifically. The only thing Riedrich should have been shown to care about is perfecting the Witcher mutations. Nothing else makes any sense. Riedrich is clearly trying to justify creating new monsters to himself. Otherwise, he would not have said any of that shit to Vesemir.
An army of beasts designed to wipe out the elves and the old races, to secure land and food.
He would only care about the mutagens. That's what he's supposed to do. That's what he does. And nothing else makes any sense. Moving on. We're going to talk about this offhand comment that was made by one of the Tavern girls in Ard Carrig, the capital of Kaedwen.
And the Striga, was she cured?
Fuck no!
The problem is that the writers are blatantly being copycats because they couldn't think of anything compelling or original to add to Vesemir's story. So now they are going against the firmly established lore about Strigas. All so they can try to make Vesemir look as cool as Geralt. Is very obviously the writers being bitch-ass copycats who can't think of something original and interesting to add to Vesemir's backstory. So they try to copy Geralt.
And the Striga, was she cured?
Yes, of course.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap right now. Stop the cap.
For real, guys. Like, Beau, Lauren, whoever is in charge of the writing, this is all you could come up with? That's it?
I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked.
Vesemir killed the Striga too? That's so lame. What about a story about a golem, or a Noonwraith, or maybe a Kairan, or a fucking Neckers, or maybe a story about Vesemir's encounter with Regis. Anything except Vesemir doing the one thing Geralt is most famous for.
But that ain't right.
Rescuing Ada was the biggest, most important job ever to Geralt's publicly known career, or damn near close to it. That's the first thing people think of when they think of famous contracts Geralt has done. And you guys, the writers, are telling me now that Vesemir did the exact same thing? And you're telling me it's supposed to have happened off-screen without any fanfare? If Vesemir is supposed to have rescued a Striga, we need some goddamn proof of it, because that is supposed to be a big deal. A really big deal. That's something that would have made him world famous because it's so damn hard. So, we are expected to believe that this happened off-screen.
Bullshit!
Perhaps during the stupid montage of Vesemir fighting generic-ass-looking monsters with next to no real variety. Maybe it was during that, somehow? You really expect me to believe a Striga was rescued somewhere in between without it ever being on screen? Like, come on, guys.
Oh, come on now. Come on.
You really expect me to believe that a Striga was rescued?
Yes, of course.
Not just put down, rescued. Like, that's a big, there's a big distinction there. Rescuing a Striga is supposed to be very, very difficult. Like, that's clearly established within the lore. So if Vesemir was supposed to have rescued a Striga, that's something that would have made him world famous because it's so damn hard. So yeah, my ass, he rescued a Striga. Bullshit.
You're so full of shit.
The writers can say Vesemir rescued a Striga until they're blue in the face, but I call bullshit. This scene is nothing more than another example of anime Vesemir being a lying piece of shit with no redeeming qualities besides being attractive and bold enough to try to be funny.
You must make a killing at Druid festivals.
Even though he is almost never actually funny.
You're a trailblazer, launching the new fad. Trendsetter, you.
This asshole version of Vesemir is very much capable of lying, obviously, because he has been lying non-stop to everyone about killing Tetra's mother, even while he acted all sanctimonious about how his word was beyond cost.
Some things are beyond cost.
And during all of that, and he still never admitted, addressed, or apologized about Tetra's mother, who he is clearly guilty of killing, according to the writers. That's a seed they planted. They're the ones that had Luka say this shit.
You swindled the Rentanian priest. Had him thinking he was cursed.
The writers are the ones pointing the finger at Vesemir, trying to make the audience think that he killed Tetra's mother. And if that's true, and Vesemir never says a word about it, he's been lying to himself and everybody around him throughout the entire movie. You see what I'm saying here?
No, you won't laugh because it's not funny.
So why should I not think that Vesemir is a lying-ass bitch on the matter of the Striga?
And the Striga, was she cured?
Yes, of course.
Why you always lying?
He's lying about that and so many other things, so I'm sure he's lying about this. You see my logic, right?
I have no idea what you just said.
If not, please tell me. I'm all ears. Truly. And if you want to have a long conversation about all this, feel free to hit me up and we can set up a conversation on Discord or something. Because this is bullshit, man. Vesemir did not kill a Striga, let alone save one. That motherfucker never even saw a Striga. Until we see some proof of it, and the story makes sense, and doesn't butcher the lore the entire time like this one did. Until then, Vesemir has never killed a Striga.
And the Striga, was she cured?
No, not quite.
And the moderators on the wiki should probably address that. I mean, they won't, but I hope they do. I hope they put something in there that says he's probably lying about this, because I'm sure he is.
My, where do you find this rubbish?
Both Vesemir encountering a Striga at all, and even more so for him having saved it, is just obvious, oh, me too, one-upsmanship at its finest.
But you know what? It pisses me off.
It's obvious. It's them going, oh, look, me too. Our character too. Our guy did it too. And I hate that more than anything in the whole world. Really. One-upsmanship. If I'm ever caught doing that, please call me out for it on the spot. Make all the jokes and all the ad hominem personal attacks. Please. I do not want to be known as a one-upsmanship professional. Studio Mir here are one-upsmanship professionals. Big league players. Like, it's just blatant copycatism. Well, my hero saved a Striga too. Vesemir is just as cool as Geralt. That right there is textbook one-upsmanship. Perfect form. And the other big-ass, Texas-sized reason the writers should not have done this, that I probably should have spent more time talking about, is because Vesemir acting like saving a Striga is no big deal also devalues the importance of saving a Striga in a big way.
And the Striga, was she cured?
Yes, of course.
I probably should have spent more time talking about this point than some of the others, but I suck at this. What do you want? The point is, though, if there are Strigas being rescued all over the place, suddenly it's not so impressive. And we don't need anyone devaluing the importance and value of Geralt's most famous contract. It's not like any of this was ever a concern for the writers, though. They don't care. They just wanted to make their guy look cool. Yeah, guys, I mean, I also rescued a Striga. It was super intense. I swear, it was crazy. It was crazy.
You're very special, clearly.
Vesemir and Luka end up in the tavern where the Striga bullshit comment is made.
And the Striga, was she cured?
Yes, of course.
There's a lot of problems with how they got there. Most stories would have some kind of important sounding or at least interesting circumstance to get the main character where she needs to be in order for the rest of the story to happen. Vesemir needed to get to the capital of Kaedwen somehow, so he could be in close proximity to Illyana and kick off the story. But the circumstances that brought Vesemir to the capital is just plain old bullshit nonsense of the highest order. You would be forgiven to think that there would be some kind of interesting reason Vesemir was there at all. Maybe a contract, or some plot that Vesemir was trying to solve. Anything. But no, you would be wrong to think so. The reason Vesemir is in Kaedwen's capital is because he was bored.
Are you serious right now?
He was bored at Kaer Morhen, and he wanted to get drunk.
Right. So, who wishes to ride and get blitzed somewhere nice and quiet?
So Vesemir and Luka lazily took off late at night and ended up in the capital before the night was over.
Let them sulk. We'll drink.
With enough time left over to tell some stories with the aforementioned tavern girl.
I looked an awful terror, red and sticky, but, that's the job.
That's real nice of Riedrich to open up a portal for these two so they could go drinking. Clearly that's how Vesemir and Luka got to the tavern. Because surely the writers did not forget that Kaer Morhen is supposed to be one of the most remote locations in the entire goddamn world that the Witchers live in.
Apparently not.
Going anywhere from Kaer Morhen should have been one hell of a journey, no matter where you're going. So clearly Riedrich opened up a portal for Luka and Vesemir. And another problem is that Vesemir literally just got to Kaer Morhen, one of the most remote locations in the entire world, that he traveled to on horseback. So this motherfucker should be tired as all hell and ready for a quiet few months in the mountains. The whole, I'm bored, can we please go get drunk attitude is simply not Vesemir.
Now, can we please go get right properly drunk?
Thanks, I hate it.
No matter where you are in the multiverse, that is not Vesemir. I'm sure he likes to drink and have fun, but that's not going to get in the way of his duties. Vesemir took his work seriously, and people do not change fundamentally.
Killing monsters is not something to be taken lightly.
Vesemir is the one who was most comfortable with staying home and tending to the keep. If he was so restless and full of piss and vinegar, like the anime would have us believe...
Right. So, who wishes to ride and get blitzed somewhere nice and quiet?
Vesemir would not be the one offering to take care of the castle while the others are gone, even if most of the other Witchers were dead. The point I'm trying to make is that if Vesemir can't sit still long enough to oversee the trial of the grasses...
It'll be Eskel, Lambert, maybe Remus.
Then how can any of us ever believe that this version of Vesemir is going to turn into the strong but gentle grandfather who tends to the half-destroyed keep and takes on the occasional contract to stay sharp?
I'm not buying it.
If Vesemir really was the way he is in the anime, he would have gone crazy being so sedentary. And not to mention, he would have been very used to having a lavish lifestyle, according to the anime.
These pleasures do not pay for themselves.
So he would have had to have gotten over all of that shit to turn into the Vesemir that we all know and love. And I simply call bullshit on that.
Bullshit! No fucking way!
This is a minor criticism. The point we are here to discuss in one of the final chapters of this video is about Kaedwen's king. I'm pretty bitter about how they minimized the role of Kaedwen's king in the fall of Kaer Morhen. They reduced the king's role so much that I hesitate to even call it a role. He is basically talking furniture at this point. The king does not seem to have a mind of his own. He is simply there to react to stimuli. I mean, perhaps that's a bit harsh, but he's not ever seen doing anything but looking in a mirror and dispensing justice when the time comes.
This one breeds monstrosities, terrorizes my kingdom, and swindles the people.
Basically the bare minimum. Originally, in the canon, there is much more going on. Kaedwen's king is a key part of the forces responsible for bringing down the School of the Wolf. Possibly even the most important part, honestly, because Kaedwen funded the Witchers for a very long time, and even paid for Kaer Morhen to be built in the first place. So the pogrom did lay the Witchers low, but the funding that was pulled away from them guaranteed that the Order would never return to its former glory. All of this is completely removed in the anime. The king has nothing to do with the Witchers, and he does not seem to have any plans of his own for anything, really, besides sitting there reacting to stuff that happens around him and looking at his own reflection in the meantime. Pretty goddamn boring, if you ask me.
I didn't ask you, and I don't care.
Originally, the scheming of mages led to the Witchers falling out of favor with the king, and then he gave his blessing for the mages to lead a pogrom. And the king wanted to solve his budget problems by getting rid of what seemed like an unnecessary expense, because of the mages meddling. The mages convinced the monarch and everyone else that the Witchers were more dangerous than they were worth, which would also have the added side effect of increasing the mages' power over society, because then people would have to come to the mages to get rid of the monsters. I mean, that's all so much more interesting than what we got in the anime. Now, the king is little more than a talking prop to help move the story along.
I'll have my knights kill you both for the sake of my ears.
He is just there existing, looking in his mirror, eating, not part of any plans or schemes, not doing anything besides sitting there, waiting for Tetra to get done with what she was doing so the king can play his very small part in it. He is vain and insufferable at every point, like that's any surprise.
Gods, quiet!
I mean, this is the most boring shit ever. How many times have we seen this stereotype in fantasy shows? Denethor in Lord of the Rings, Xerxes, Prince John, Jude Law, Joffrey, Commodus, and a million other real and fictional monarchs whose names escape me right now. So many different rulers from history and fiction have been portrayed the same way this asshole right here was in the movie. They've been portrayed as ineffectual, vain, arrogant, insufferable, cruel, and useless. We have seen the same character so many times in so many different stories. He looks a little different each time, but he's basically the same character. And any value there was in portraying the character that way is diminished to the point of non-existence because it's been done so many times. The writers gain nothing by changing Kaedwen's king to be a useless dickhead. The audience gains nothing by seeing another useless dickhead. And Netflix doesn't retain as many subscriptions by having Kaedwen's king be a useless dickhead. The audience wants another Tywin or perhaps someone like King Henselt from The Witcher 2. All of the changes in regards to the King of Kaedwen all add up to him not being taken seriously in the slightest by anyone.
Oh dear, I seem to have spotted a cunt. Good day.
That is the source of my problem. I am glad that they at least chose to use the name of an actual king that was King of Kaedwen at one point and did come from the canon. Dagriad did exist. That's way better than the writers making up a wholly new character out of pure spite for the book fans. Dagriad did exist in the lore. He was who King Dagriad of Sintra was named after by his mother Ellen, who was Dagriad's granddaughter. Dagriad was already supposed to be dead by the time the Nightmare of the Wolf takes place. His son Benda was supposed to be the King of Kaedwen at that time, so they switched things around for some reason. The writers wanted their version of Kaedwen's king to come off as a useless, self-obsessed turd. Monarchies are, in a lot of ways, the definition of an evil government type, but not every monarch needs to be portrayed as an ineffectual turd. Audiences today want to have a villain to take seriously. It's more fun that way and much more compelling. There is nothing scary scary about the haughty, ineffectual, vain dandy like the anime version of Dagriad, the one we're talking about. Nothing about him is scary whatsoever. I think the writers did this because they were determined to have the king in The Nightmare of the Wolf be a vain and arrogant ruler for some unfathomable reason that I just can't quite understand.
I have no idea.
Maybe it's because they didn't want the king to overshadow Tetra.
You have made a serious error.
I have no idea, to be honest. Everything I've said in this section is pure speculation. In the original description for how Kaer Morhen fell, the king was an integral part of the story. It wasn't a first-hand story, it was just descriptions and, kind of what we know. Again, the king was an important part of that story, such as it is, especially when it comes to the political situation that led to the pogrom. And I think it was a huge mistake to reduce the king to little more than a joke. It would have been far more compelling to have Dagriad be shown as a force to be reckoned with. Maybe a harsh and cruel ruler who prides himself as a genius but is really quite incompetent. Maybe he gets tricked into betraying the Witchers by mages, and then later is betrayed himself by the mages. The possibilities are endless. So I don't think I would be wrong or inaccurate to call Dagriad here a bona fide wasted opportunity of the highest order. Well, maybe not the highest, but there's no doubt that he is a wasted opportunity.
What a waste.
Though there are definitely bigger wasted opportunities. Give me a Tywin Lannister any day. Smart, but ends up making terrible mistakes despite his intelligence. That would have been so much better. I prefer characters to have a mind of their own. Or at least I want to be able to feel like they have a mind of their own without having to put the blinders on. I want to be fooled into thinking that these characters could be real people. But I get none of that from The Nightmare of the Wolf. Maybe it's just because I'm jaded and bitter against the anime. That's certainly possible. But I feel like it's more the writer's fault than it is mine. Okay, this has been an incredibly long video, with so many different points being brought up. It's literally impossible, at least for me, to come up with a conclusion that summarizes all of the points I made. Naturally, I will strive in the future to keep these videos as brief as possible, as this video went way out of control. It was like exercising a demon or something. It just came out of me and I had to keep going until the end, whenever that might be, which just so happens to be at the end of this section.
Oh God, I hope so.
There are a few things I'd like to say before then, however. Reception to the live-action show was lukewarm at best, considering how divisive it was. And a big part of me believes the success of the anime is little more than a false positive, since most hardcore Witcher fans already dipped out of here by the time the anime released. Many of the biggest Witcher fans won't have seen the anime. I think if all of the Witcher fans saw the anime and gave it honest reviews, the Metacritic score and Rotten Tomatoes score would not be so high. Most of the audience for The Nightmare of the Wolf is made up of people that like the live-action show and want more of that. I mean, that's pure speculation, of course. I have no proof for that, but it seems rather likely from my point of view. It seems like the people who are partial to the Netflix series, and thus more forgiving of mistakes, it seems like those would be the ones who go out of their way to leave reviews. There are a good many positive reviews for The Nightmare of the Wolf, both in video and comment form. They're all over the place on Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes, and there are a bunch of videos about The Nightmare of the Wolf on YouTube. Many of the videos are heaping endless positive praise onto the anime. It's just sort of a, I watched it, I liked this and that. That thing was cool, and I didn't like this, and that's kind of it. And while I do admit that that format is a lot more profitable on the platform, and likely leads to more success here, I wanted to take a really deep dive, at least by my own standards. A deep dive by someone else would be a lot more informative and compelling, I'm sure. But I really did want to try and argue with a lot of the stuff they tried to do here. Chances are, the success of this video will be underwhelming to say the least, and most viewers will not have stuck through to the first section. But for those of you that do, I hope you got something out of it.
Probably not.
Even if it is just someone new to argue with and throw insults at. I'm more than happy to be the internet's punching bag if it means I get to make videos for a living. So like and subscribe if you please. I know it's tempting to ignore that plea because I have so few subscribers now, since the herd mentality tells you that since I have so few, I probably don't deserve any more subscribers.
That's stupid.
But I argue that subscriptions should be based on future potential, and my arrogant ass feels like I have some of that. Potential, I mean. And besides, Who you subscribe to does not really matter all that much to your content feed and to your notifications. And I don't release videos all that often, so it's not like I'll be contaminating your notifications with stuff that you have no interest in watching. Validate me, mommy. Please. I want to be another insufferable internet star with delusions of grandeur.
I want to be Instagram famous, bitch.
And I have the ever-burning desire to talk shit and create sacrifices for the hordes of eyeballs waiting to consume it. So do your boy a favor and give me them numbers so other creators and creative people will take me seriously so I can make my content better. That's all I'm saying, man. I also have a Patreon where I'm going to post the longer versions of my videos with all of the points that were solid enough, but were too boring for the video, and because I didn't want to have an 8-hour video. Plus, you'll get access to a Discord server if hanging out with me is something that interests you. Probably not, though. So yeah, all of that extra shit will be on there. The limit right now is 4 hours. Until Tro or Joseph Anderson come out with a 6-hour banger, then maybe the limit might go up. And especially if I can get some editors on board to make my videos more visually palatable for long periods of time. You bet your ass I could bloviate for 6 to 8 hours, no problem at all, baby. Fuck, I think I could go even longer with the right subject.
You're very special, clearly.
But all that depends on the audience reception to this long-ass hunk of shit of a video. If you like having a long-ass video to listen to on your way to work and shit, and you want to have some ideas to rattle around in your mind, then by all means, baby, hit that subscribe button and toss a coin to your, bitcher. Is that even a thing?
Oh, okay. I see what you did there.
But back to the point at hand. Some final words on The Witcher. This franchise has a lot of fucking gravitas in the fantasy world. It's way up there in the pantheon of greats. Well, before Netflix came along, anyway. Before then, The Witcher was world-renowned and had a near-spotless reputation as a compelling fantasy universe with boundless potential. Everything CDPR added to the canon fit so well with what was already there that in a lot of cases it was hard to tell who thought of what. CD Projekt Red blended their additions so well with the existing canon, it's honestly impressive. I mean, perhaps a real expert could come in and make me eat those words by pointing out a bunch of inconsistencies between the games and the books, but on the whole, I feel strongly that CDPR did a fantastic job expanding upon the fictional universe in a way that not only respected the original canon, but very much improved upon it, forwarding the original themes and ideas the books had. I couldn't say the same thing about the Netflix Witcher universe and keep a straight face. The success of the books is very much tied to the success of the games. Without the games, there is no Witcher in the English-speaking world. And that's just the sad truth of it. So to me, it's the height of arrogance to come in and try to cut the games out of the public consciousness of the Witcher universe.
But that ain't right.
Who the fuck are the Netflix writers to exclude the games?
Good question.
Despite all of my complaining and shit-talking, and no matter how hyperbolic I might get, I do not think that the writers of the anime or the show should ever suffer any kind of adverse consequences for their work on The Witcher, no matter how offensively bad and heartbreakingly inaccurate their version might be, no matter what horrible violations they do to the lore that we all know and love. They are artists at the end of the day, and artists should be able to create art with impunity, no matter how angry the world gets at what they do. The people writing the Netflix Witcher universe are probably more activist than they are artists, but they are still artists, and they deserve the same impunity as every other artist out there, no matter what canonical literary crimes they've committed. I truly believe that. And I also truly believe activists are best served from the perspective of all parties involved, creating brand new works of their own, rather than taking over existing properties. Because any message you try to send will be significantly undermined by the resentment fans have for the changes you've made, regardless of why you've done it. The purest intentions don't mean shit if the changes you make ruin the story you're trying to tell. In the anime's case, it was very much ruined by what they added. I feel very confident in saying that. Maybe you liked it. Maybe you really enjoyed The Nightmare of the Wolf.
You're very special, clearly.
But it was still ruined all the same. It just means that you like something that was ruined. And more importantly, the trade-off to this artist immunity is that people like me get to talk an endless amount of shit about whatever the artists do, with the same level of impunity. If you guys get to ruin everything, then we get to talk all the shit we want without being publicly canceled for it. People like the Netflix writers get to spend their time making shitty, uninspired propaganda for admittedly virtuous causes, and people like me get to bitch and moan publicly about the horrific things they've done to the things so many of us love so dearly, even if they did do it in the name of progressive causes. And even though the causes the writers support are generally valid and something worth fighting for, that does not mean that we have to sacrifice some of the best fantasy stories humanity has to continue the fight.
That's foolish. You pick the one right tool.
We can fight for equality and a better world without destroying all of the stories that we hold dear, since the stories are not the oppressors. Especially in the case of The Witcher. That was already super progressive, and did not need to change, really. Even if you did it for good reasons, like I keep saying, the story was good as it was, and all of the changes you've made have all but ruined it. And really, all we needed from you, Lauren and Beau, and everyone else, was to deliver that story to us, with new aesthetics, and a big budget, with talented artists to give it a fresh take. But that doesn't mean different. We didn't need the sweeping lore changes that will only ever make the Witcher universe worse.
How's he doing? How's the child doing?
I hope this explains my position sufficiently.
Well, it doesn't.
I just plain don't like what they did. I love the reasons they did it. I support the cause they do. But what they actually did sucks. And all of the best intentions in the world don't mean jack shit when you've fucked up every meaningful part of the original story. So I strongly believe that fans owe the writers a harsh reminding of who brought The Witcher to us all in the first place, with words and public pressure, of course, to remind the Netflix writers of just how much the games did to bring this universe to the world's attention. No shade intended to the books. They're all masterpieces and truly the best way to enjoy the Witcher universe, without question.
That is obvious.
But the games are very much a close second, and under no circumstance should the games have been separated from the canon. Netflix made an enemy of so many fans for doing that.
You and I are enemies now.
When they needed the hardcore fans more than anyone else, if they want to profit from this intellectual property. I don't know how many times I have to say that the hardcore fans are the ones who are the most profitable. They're the ones who buy the merchandise, the statues, the t-shirts, all of the licensable stuff. That's where the real money is at, and you know Netflix would be getting a nice chunk of that pie. If only Netflix had embraced the games and picked up where they left off. Oh my god, the hype would be off the charts. The world would not have been ready for that level of excitement for a fantasy show, and Netflix would have been at the epicenter of all that hype too, profiting all along the way. But instead, they chose to go their own way and hire a bunch of uninspired activists who would much rather be working on some other highbrow project if they had the choice.
And for years, I had a lot of trouble finding myself in fantasy.
And naturally, those activist writers decided to jump on the chance to tie their ideas to the behemoth of a franchise that The Witcher is, directly because of the game's success, might I remind you. I know you feel like this was the right thing to do, Lauren.
Do I believe it's the right thing? I do. I really do.
You're full of shit.
And maybe you're right. I'm not in a position to say one way or the other. But I should remind you, this is a business after all. And all of us, well, maybe not the writers since they get paid no matter what, but the rest of us all want The Witcher to succeed as much as possible. And the only way that will ever happen on the level we are hoping for is if the writers of the show swallow their goddamn pride and embrace the games. They need to drop the activism and make some significant changes and do some serious backtracking. Because the direction the writers are headed now is going to end in disaster. They will always have some people supporting them, because there are always people willing to put the blinders on and ignore all of the dumbass mistakes and inconsistencies in front of them.
Seriously, do not do that.
But if you guys want real success, you need to unify the fandom and get everyone feeding off of each other's excitement. If there is division within the fandom, any success is going to be underpinned with resentment and bickering between fans. And you can bet that sweet chocolate booty that the merchandise will not be flying off the shelves like it would have if the writers didn't try to go their own way the whole fucking time.
Oh dear, I seem to have spotted a cunt. Good day.
Everything I've said applies to the anime and the live-action show. The whole Netflix Witcher universe in general, which is really only made up of the live-action show and the anime as of right now. Blood Origin is on its way, and I can only imagine what kind of changes that will bring with it. I'm kind of dreading that show, if I'm honest. But you can bet your ass I'll be making a video about it when it comes out. And I'll probably be making a video about the live-action show on its own as well. I might wait until season 3 comes out to do that, though. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not done with The Witcher, though. That's for damn sure. My point is, the writers need to remember not to bite the hand that feeds. And the games are very much the hand that feeds in this case. So much of The Witcher's goodwill and reputation comes from the games, and the writers would do well to not forget it. So when you guys get record-breaking numbers, just remember that you're capitalizing on the work of CD Projekt Red in an incalculable way, to a degree that no one could ever measure. There is no way to know how much of Netflix's success is owed to the games, but I'd be willing to bet it's quite a fucking lot. I know you arrogant bastards, meaning the writers, are going to want to think that the success is from what they've done, and part of it is, that's true. But if you think, for one goddamn second, that this show would have made it to the 3rd season without having the Witcher name to save it, you are sadly mistaken. This show would have had the same importance as something like Outlander or something if it didn't have the Witcher name. It would have a small but dedicated group of fans, and I'm sure it would be fine in its own right, but the numbers would not be anything like what they are now. No shade to Outlander or anything. I'm just trying to say that The Witcher would not be on the scale it is without the games, if the show was even made at all. We all need to agree on that at some point or another, even if you hate the games. The Witcher 3 set the bar so unbelievably high, nobody but CD Projekt Red themselves will be able to top it. And Netflix trying to do it without using anything added by CDPR is just plain self-deletion, in my opinion. I fucking hate having to use slang like that. It's just not possible to have that kind of success without embracing the games. Or at least, if it is, it's not going to be anywhere near as successful as the show could have been if they had just kept their damn place and realized that they are just another adaptation.
I am writing an adaptation. It's what I was hired to do.
They shouldn't be trying to reinvent everything. Just make a new IP if you want to do that. It's a lot more work to remake everything too. If they had just picked up where CDPR left off, they wouldn't have to spend as much time working out all the details. They could focus on the new exciting stuff and just let what was already there do the heavy lifting. Again, for the last time, I promise. The success of The Witcher 3 earned its right to be included into the live-action show. And the writers' arrogance to exclude the games is an insult the fans will not soon forget. And I think because of it, the fans owe Netflix a metaphorical black eye to remind them of where they came from. I'm not saying anything violent or bad, of course, just metaphorical.
Well, it doesn't matter. We've got to put a stop to it.
This video is my addition to the arguments being posed by people who object to what Netflix is doing.
Crap! Well, I ain't standing for this! Well, might as hell!
But I would much rather have something that is actually part of the same universe as the games we all know and love. The biggest problems game adaptations have is the writers are always so arrogant they think they can make it on their own without including what the games did.
That's a bad thing, though, right?
And that is just as true here as it is anywhere else. It's still early yet, and that's the best defense fans of the show have right now. But you watch. The show will end up going off in a completely different direction than anyone expected, and no one except the most dedicated sycophants will enjoy it.
What a waste.
I'll be there to watch the spectacle unfold and talk a bunch of shit along the way, but I'd much rather be making something positive than negative. I'd much rather be singing their praises than talking shit, and I would have if they didn't decide to go their own way. I just can't when the writers change literally everything I love about this fictional universe.
Why would you do that?
And before you tell me to go watch something else, fuck off. I was here before Netflix ever thought of The Witcher. I have a right to talk all the shit I want, and you know damn well I have at least some points. Sometimes I might be reaching, but for the most part, I am at least partially correct when I say this could have been so much better and so much more profitable if they had just gotten over themselves and embraced what was already there. I could scream that until I'm blue in the face, and it wouldn't make a bit of difference. No one is going to listen to me anyway, so I might as well end it here so I can get this video posted and get to work on the next sacrifice for the endless sacrificial blood pit that is YouTube. If anyone should write a book about the worst way to handle an adaptation, it should obviously be done by a professional who knows their shit, but they should definitely use Lauren and Beau and whoever else as prime examples of how not to handle an adaptation.
I am writing an adaptation. It's what I was hired to do.
God, he sucks.
But that's just my opinion. Maybe you think these two are the greatest writers to ever live and can do no wrong. I'd seriously question your values if you felt that way, but who am I to say I know better? Everything in this video is simply my opinion on something we all enjoy. You probably don't like a lot of what I've had to say, and I feel you there. I don't like me either. So let me know where I went wrong and how I can do better in the future.
You don't belong in this platform.
fuck off, asshole.
Remember, hit that subscribe button, please. No one takes me seriously without some numbers. And it costs you nothing, so please just, please do it, please. Let me justify my video creation with validation, please. And let me know if I should make more long-form videos. If you enjoyed this, let me know. Or if you want me to make shorter videos in the future, I'd like to know that as well. But that's all I've got for this one, baby. I've been working on this video since the day after I released the Yennefer video, something like 3 or 4 months ago. And I've gone through 3 different versions so far. So it's been a long journey to release this video. And what's ironic is that these words were written like weeks before I'm even close to done with this video. As I wrote this, because I'm recording it much later, there was tons of work to do. I had only just started editing and had like 15 sections to record and cut yet. And since then, I've recorded most of those, but I've still got a ton of editing to do. Hopefully by the time I'm done, not too much time will have passed and I can get to work on the next one. That's all I've got. Get the hell out of here. Go watch one of my other videos, or I don't know. Leave a comment. Leave a real long comment. That's what I want. I want comments. But other than that, we'll see ya. Bye-bye now.
Kill everyone now. Condone first-degree murder. Advocate cannibalism. Eat shit.
I want to be Instagram famous, bitch.
It's either all okay or none of it's okay.
Honestly, I think you're gonna get used to it pretty quickly.
It's like a battleground, isn't it?
I've never been one to look a gift cock in the beak.
But the people are retarded.
You've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.